OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 on this Monday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to be talking about that penalty shootout at the Aviva Stadium. We're going to be getting stuck into the fact that Manchester City are basically Premier League champions at this point, and it was a weekend of sunshine around the championship as well. So we've got plenty of GAA coming your way between now and 10 o'clock. If there's anything you want to get off your chest, you can tweet us at Off The Ball. Anything you want myself and Ger to get stuck into. Ger, how are you?
Very well, Eoin. Very well. What's the crack?
What piqued your interest over the course of the weekend?
Well, Munster were very, 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 very good, but just not quite good enough. It's one of those things that they're going to have a lot of regrets for. It's definitely right there in the pantheon of moral victories that Munster used to have in European games. And I don't know, they are up against the World Rugby Player of the Year and Ntamack and the defending champions who are getting good. And they've put them to the absolute pin of their collar. And they've had 2 kicks to win it. Granted, they're like moonshots, but I don't know how they recover emotionally from that. Like, maybe it's good that that's the end of the Van Graan era and they can look forward now with this to build on. And it's a completely different backroom team who are coming in to be different voices. And obviously Roundtree isn't a different voice, but Mike Prendergast will be, and Leamy will be, and whoever else they add in will be able to come in and speak objectively about that game, because I suspect it will be very difficult for the team to speak objectively about it, just from oh my God, look how close we were. And if O'Mahony hadn't got injured, if some of the penalties had gone over, if the drop goal had gone over, a lot of ifs, ands and buts, but ultimately they're out.
A little bit of FOMO on Saturday, not going to lie, watching the game in Cork as opposed to not being in the Aviva Stadium watching it. This was the sporting event of the weekend. This was like one of these really unique moments, not quite on the level of Leinster against Munster and Croke Park, obviously, but something that will carry with it that uniqueness down through the years, you'd imagine, because, whether it's people who are saying, yeah, I paid €10 for a ticket in the year 2022, we got bused for free up to Dublin, the place was just a sea of red. There was this amazing rendition of all the different songs throughout the 100 odd minutes plus. I think it'll just go down as just one of these great Irish sporting events.
Yeah, and it has also denied us another one.
Yeah.
Because the semi-final would have been amazing. I think if Munster had gone into that semi-final fresh off a victory over Toulouse, they would have gone in with some confidence, knowing full well what they know intimately about the Leinster team that they would be facing. So, and look, I think we have been very critical on this show and on all of our platforms of the Munster hierarchy over the recent seasons. They obviously did this really well. They managed that whole situation brilliantly. From the moment they knew that the game wasn't going to be in Thomond because of the Ed Sheeran concerts, which I was I think there was massive outcry about that, but it was all nonsense because Munster have a debt they need to service. This is just a strange concatenation of events because of COVID and because of the different tournament. This is going to happen at some stage when you own a massive stadium and you need to pay it back. So once that happened, they put in plan a place to make the Aviva a fortress, and it was genuinely a fortress. And stuff like that really, really matters in the long run, that you're able to get your crowd, you're able to mobilise them. And, I can't imagine those scenes are going to hurt when you're making calls to try and convince other coaches to join that backroom team and other players to join the team.
Yeah, and I'd imagine Damien de Allende is looking around thinking to himself, God, I wish I had another season of this. Was it Brian O'Driscoll who had the figure last week, or was it somebody had the figure anyway about de Allende and the amount of times he's actually played in front of a home crowd at Thomond, and it's in single digits, and that's going to be something. And I'm just picking him because he's one of the most high-profile signings they've made, and he's obviously in the departure lounge in the off-season this year. There is a sense that there is a bit of missing out on his side of things, but on the flip side, as you say, trying to attract new talent to come to the province, if that's what they want to do, then they're not going to shirk at the possibility of those sort of days, because it'll be just like that in a packed out Thomond next season, or potentially at the end of this season. And I know it may not be at Thomond, but they may be, looking at a situation where it could be a URC final against a certain other Irish province. I know they have to play Leinster in the regular season before things wrap up, but there is this kind of feeling that there might be momentum building. It could be just a once-off, as you say. The next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting.
Who knows? Who knows what they can take from that? Do they take it and think, right, well, that's our brilliant performance for the year out of the way, or they're like, look, we can do that next week as well. There's no reason why we can't do that again over the course of the season. I mean, you'd like to think from Irish rugby's perspective, it would be brilliant if Leinster could win in Europe and Munster could win the domestic competition. That would be kind of the ideal scenario, where that rivalry, where Leinster lose a game and it's not the European one, that they get their 5th star, and that Munster feel like they're going into next year much closer to Leinster than we had thought previously. Now, here's the thing, that might just have been a one-off performance. That might just have been one of those backs to the wall, incredible emotional things, and they're actually miles away from Leinster still. We don't know, because that's the way rugby works, really.
Leinster in the first half as well, a couple of hours later, probably show that they're absolutely the standard bearer in this. I personally wouldn't mind to see a Leinster Ronan O'Gara match-up in the final in this thing as well, which is a live possibility at this point. We are going to come back to Munster very shortly. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, in particular the penalty shootout. Was it a good way to settle a game? Did you enjoy it? Was it the right level of tension? Was Roman Ntamak celebrating like he thought he'd won the shootout a little bit prematurely? Actually the best moment on Saturday? I think it was. We'll be getting back into that in the amber in our performance rankings in just a little while. It is 7:35. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is time for the Gillette performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. Our performances was just lacked that intensity.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Every week we're giving away a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be in with a chance of winning, just let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. Best place to enter is the Off the Ball Instagram page, and you'll see the comments box in our story. Let's run you through what we're looking at this morning. We're going to look at the Liverpool-Manchester United bias, GAA scheduling, both in the red, that rugby shootout in the amber. I think it's stone cold green personally, but we'll get to that in a moment. Kerry's depth in the green, and the Limerick hurlers forever in green, it seems. Any stopping them over the course of the next little while will be one of the questions we ponder this week and this morning. We'll start off there at the bottom, which is Liverpool-Manchester United bias. It is a bad weekend, and was a bad weekend for the duopoly of bias at near the upper echelons of the Premier League. Pep Guardiola was one of the people who really tried to hammer home this idea of bias on beIN Sport yesterday after Manchester City had hammered Newcastle United. He kind of threw this in there after a brilliant win for his team, a win that moved him into a pretty comfortable position, I think it's fair to say, in the race for the Premier League title. He said, everybody in this country, the media and everyone, supports Liverpool, of course, because Liverpool has an incredible history behind them in European competition, not in the Premier League because they have won one in 30 years. But it's not a problem at all. The situation is what it is. Not happy whatsoever about, I guess, the certain comfort that people feel in seeing Liverpool do well. And he feels that Manchester City winning the Premier League title, as they've come so close to doing now as a result of yesterday, is something that's going to be, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people out there. It kind of echoes what Sergio Aguero said recently. He said in England, all the journalists, everybody, all the TV channels, they're all Manchester United supporters. Everybody. And I guess, you know, they're not wrong in terms of what they say. There's obviously a massive fan base for both of these clubs, and it's quite interesting that this mask sometimes slips with Pep Guardiola a little bit, this idea that he is kind of the outsider, that his Manchester City team kind of still feel a little bit like the outsiders in all of this, as if they're upsetting the apple cart somewhat when they go and win trophies.
Yeah, it's interesting that Pep feels this way, given that he came through the Barcelona system and had his greatest period of success at Barcelona when he had the best team in the world, and then went to Bayern Munich, who are the only team in Germany when it comes to TV coverage and globalization. And okay, so obviously Dortmund have occasionally registered little blips, little tiny little blips on the seismograph. Is that what it is? Whatever it is. This is weird. I think this is a weird paranoia that Pep has, but I think it probably speaks to the fact that they know that they're there because of the money that is coming from the Gulf. And like, it's not about tradition. It's not something that they had this incredible crop of youngsters come through, despite having the greatest academy that we've ever heard of. The last decade, we've been hearing again and again and again how great their academy is. It's the best in the world. And you know, maybe there are a couple of other players. That bench was obviously full of kids the other night, and you again raise questions about the building of the squad. But what's he trying to say here? We can't get no love for the €1 billion that we spent and the financial fair play regulations that we managed to bend but not break, according to how the court case ended up. But the rest of the world thinks we did break them. Is he aware of the fact that everybody thinks they just bought the success? Is that what's going on?
I wonder, is that CV, Pep Guardiola's CV, actually the reason why he feels like this, that he is used to being, part of the establishment, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, the sort of the establishment when it comes to Spanish football or German football, and Manchester City is, to a certain extent, anti-establishment at this point, that Liverpool and Manchester United, and to a lesser extent Arsenal, will be very much seen as the establishment of English football. I wonder, is that actually sort of just his muscle memory speaking here when he comes out with things like this?
I mean, it's accurate, right? The vast majority of historic global fans and the biggest supported clubs in England are Liverpool and Manchester United, because they were, you couldn't say that Manchester United are the most supported because they were the most successful. When Manchester United were going through their drought, they were still massively supported. And I think a lot of it probably goes back to the response that the club had to the Munich air disaster and how that just won people over for generations to come. They have black in their kit as part of that. And I think, that made a lot of people feel emotionally bound to them. And likewise, Liverpool have risen from a city that has been forgotten politically and socially and economically for a long period of time, and managed to build brilliant football teams. And they were football teams that were built on relative shoestrings or through the academy. And it's just different from going around the world and buying the best players and saying, we deserve to be treated the same way as everybody else, when it's actually not the same thing. You can't buy tradition. It's the one thing that all of Manchester City's money can't buy. Now, in 50 years' time, if they've won 37 out of the next 50 leagues and 25 out of the next 50 Champions Leagues, then they'll be one of the most supported clubs in the world. But will people care? I don't know. I won't.
Give it 50 years, maybe there'll be some inkling of that stony heart of yours that'll change, and you'll wake up to the warmth that Manchester City are bringing to all of our lives. We'll see. Let's not make any predictions on that front just yet. We put Liverpool, Manchester United bias in red because it was a bad weekend for Liverpool and for Manchester United. What's interesting, I think, if we're sticking with sour enough manager comments, if you look at that Liverpool-Tottenham game, Tottenham, especially under Antonio Conte, have had a pretty good record of taking on the big two and getting points off them. They've got two draws against Liverpool, they got 2 wins against Manchester City. I know Conte wasn't there for all of those games, but Klopp, as we've seen so many times in the past, doesn't take these sort of situations very well whatsoever. It's part of what makes him a great manager, and it's, I guess, a symptom of being a very, very successful manager, is that when you're not successful within 90 minutes or you don't get a win that you feel like you deserve to get, you're probably not going to be overly happy with it. And afterwards he said, I'm sorry, I'm the wrong person for that, when he was asked about Tottenham. I don't like this kind of football, but that's my personal problem. I think they're world class and I think they should do more for the game. I think they had 38% possession, but it's my problem. I cannot coach it, so that's why I cannot do it. So yes, world class players, block all the balls, really difficult. Atletico Madrid is doing it. Fine, they won, whatever, fine, absolutely fine. I just can't. I respect everything they do, but it's not me.
I respect everything they do, but delete everything before the word but.
This is the Atletico dig. Is that still March 2020 speaking there, when we all thought Klopp was just being a little bit grumpy because, COVID was about to engulf our entire world for a little while? But actually it's this taste he has in his mouth when his plan just gets swallowed up a little bit by a Simeone or Conte. For me, two absolutely fantastic managers, and if you want to compare ahead of Thursday night to the two North London approaches to Liverpool this season. Liverpool beat Arsenal 6-0 and they managed to, a 2-2 draw and a 1-1 draw against Tottenham both times. I think you'd pretty much, you know which manager is happier with their outcomes against Liverpool, and it's going to be Conte versus Arteta. Whereas I'd say Klopp probably has a lot of nicer things to say about Arteta than Conte. So I think if Klopp is complaining about you, you're doing something very, very right, actually.
And so Spurs should do absolutely everything they possibly can to keep Conte. I really think going back to Pochettino, if that's their consolation prize, this summer is the wrong course of action for them and for the club. I think it's going to make a big difference to them in the future. Like, there's a possibility that Antonio Conte is their version of Klopp, and he might be that transformative figure that the club really needs to become title contenders, pardon me, and or European contenders in the long run.
Yeah. The other side of things then, I mean, this is just, like, was it last week you were saying that we'd gone maybe 10 consecutive weeks in the performance rankings with Manchester United in the red? Did we get a break last week? What happened last week? I can't remember, but something strange and awful must have happened for us to, like, not have Manchester United in the red last week, but they are back with a bang, I think it's fair to say. And is this, like, is this the lowest of the low? Have we asked this question multiple times, and have we always come to the conclusion that yes, this is the lowest of the low, and this is very much the case again this morning, because like they are now going to end up with sorry,
this isn't go ahead. Certainly, I've never come to the conclusion this is the lowest of the low, because it can always get worse.
No, but I mean to this point, I mean it's always been the lowest of the low. It's still on a downward curve.
So that's not the lowest of the low. That's like, this is a staging post to the bottom.
Yeah,
This is the slippery slope.
The lowest so far.
We could be mid-slide.
Its lowest point so far, right?
It's a new low.
A new low. Okay, I can settle for that.
A new low.
It is officially now going to be their worst ever return points wise for a Premier League season in the Premier League.
They got relegated.
I know, but football only started in 1992. Football is only a 30-year-old sport. Let's not forget.
Okay, but they have been no, it is not a new low. And actually, like I asked the question on our Friday morning show, which United will finish higher up the table next season, Manchester or Newcastle? And Colin Bowie told me that it was a joke. I was doing it to troll and to be insulting. I am not doing it to be a troll or to be insulting. I legitimately think there's a chance that Newcastle will finish ahead of Manchester United next season. How quickly can Erik ten Hag turn this around? Like, look at the playing stock that he has. He's going to be working with McTominay and Telles and Shaw. Like, is he actually going to be able to turn these players into players who can compete against Spurs and Wolves? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know.
Like, I mean, I think that is a very different question to can they compete with Sean Longstaff and Joe Linton. And I like Joe Linton is a very, very good player and is better than maybe some of those Manchester United players you've mentioned there potentially. And I think he's probably.
What if Ten Hag doesn't hit the ground running? What if he's 18 months before he gets things going properly? Can you see them being beaten 4-0 by mid-table team? So anybody from West Ham to Leicester to Villa next season, any of those teams could beat mediocre on their day at Old Trafford, maybe. That's the new low.
Yeah. Like, it's the situation here, and like if you want to look at it in a very simplified way, that on Monday night, Rangnick stumbled upon, I guess, what he thought was his best formation, some version that was close to maybe his best team, and as a result they got one of their better performances of the season, and was like, that worked, therefore let's do it again, without realising that Brentford are a different team to Brighton and Hove Albion, and these are two very different challenges, and you can't just set up the same way in back-to-back games and hope for the same outcome, especially when you come up against a good team and an excellent manager in Graham Potter. Is that not just a simplification of it? Like, I granted, it's too simple, but is that not like a huge part of what happened leading into the weekend? And is Erik ten Hag just not a far superior manager to Ralph Rangnick?
Yes, well, look, I think anybody at this stage is going to look superior to Rangnick because of how badly he seems to have managed the situation, how he has been incapable of improving any of the players, how nobody looks better than when he arrived. And, the reports from the training ground, you can see it made manifest on the playing pitch. Like, it's been a disaster. He has been a disaster as a manager. And so that, I think, is the thing that will give Manchester United fans some hope. But what if Ten Hag's not the man? What if Ten Hag finds this job to be a too big? What if he was made perfect for Dutch football and it's not a shoe-in that he's going to be successful. It's not a guarantee. More than likely he will be, right? He has an excellent CV. He's not young. He knows football very well at this stage. He has plenty of experience. And so he definitely has what you would say is the right CV. However, the people who picked Ten Hag are the people who picked Ralph Rangnick. Can't forget that.
And that's the problem here. And that's the framework of a club that is going to be making or have a big hand in the signings this summer. compared to maybe the framework that we're going to see at Newcastle United, which always looks like that. I mean, like that. By the way, I'm arguing the point here that Manchester United are going to finish ahead of Newcastle United. This is not like a big leap for me to be trying to rush to the defence on that point. I do think you're getting ahead of yourself just a little bit on that. Like I thought the question on Friday was who's going to win a Premier League title first.
No. Like who's going to? I mean, no.
Like
who will compete first for a title from these two clubs next?
Yeah.
I can see that being Newcastle as well. But I think Newcastle are going to finish ahead of Man United next season.
Interesting.
Well, let's wait and see how the summer goes, right? I mean, can Ten Hag make 10 signings in the summer?
Like he probably needs to sell 10 players, and as a result of that, maybe he'll be allowed to sign 10 players. But they would need to have a good bit of that lined up already. You'd have to say. And like one of my favourite statistics actually was Jack Pitt-Brooke in The Athletic, who said that Manchester United will finish at least 20 points behind the 81-point standard that Jose Mourinho set in 2017-18. So they're 20 points worse off than Jose's Manchester United peak, which wasn't much of a peak at all.
Yeah, with Jose Mourinho as a real manager, Ralph Rangnick was a glorified scout. Like, this is King Ralph territory, where the entire royal family gets electrocuted and John Goodman ends up as the king. It's the premise for a movie that I've never seen, but was the one on every video trailer that we had in the 80s. And like, that's what happened. Ralph Rangnick was King Ralph.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, we thought that we were kind of like free, or this story was free from us and everybody really, but it just gets more and more interesting. It absolutely is another staging post towards the bottom. 4-0 to Brighton, surely will be close to the nadir. Like, I'm not saying it is.
No. I mean, they could be relegation candidates next year. We don't know. Like, they could be.
Surely not.
What's stopping them?
Money.
The form at the moment is so bad.
With the wage bill dictates where you should finish in the table, and Manchester United are a massive outlier in terms of their wage bill versus
constant outliers. Always the exception to the rule when it comes to this. Look,
Ten
Hag can revolutionise this, right?
Yeah.
He can have them fit. He can have them physically ready. He can have them tactically and technically prepared for games, and that would be a quantum leap forward. Sure, okay, but you're telling me that Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay are the backbone of a team that is going to finish in the top 6 next season? I'm not sure. Like, Bruno might be, but where's Bruno's form gone?
Yeah. Is Bruno even the best Bruno in this Manchester United, Newcastle United kind of head-to-head that you're talking about here is probably the next debate that we're going to have in the show. A couple of texts in. Comco Productions is not happy with our performance rankings list. Limerick at the top is a joke, they say. They were outplayed by a tip team missing 10 players from last year. How about Manchester City or Verstappen? Fair points, all performance rankings in disarray, I think it's fair to say. I'm going to just blame the performance rankings on you, Ger, because I'm kind of leading the show this morning and it's usually the other person who picks them, even though I may or may not have picked them. Just tweet at Ger Gilroy for any complaints you may have. Limerick at the top, a joke. He says, Kenny the Dad says, Pep wants to be loved, but he went to Bayern after they won the Champions League. He left, they won it again. He hasn't won it at City despite spending vast amounts of money. And then Kenny the Dad also says, Klopp, when he arrived at Liverpool, said he wanted to bring back enjoyment. He says people work all week to be entertained on a Saturday. He has never changed in his attitude, which is fair enough. And I mean, that explains his own style of play, which is very effective as well as being very enjoyable to watch. But I would say that a lot of Tottenham fans would take winning football and getting them back into the top 4 ahead of... I think that would be the ultimate end goal, to get their enjoyment, really, at this moment. But it is out of their hands, as we know. And then, most importantly, Dave Cos has been in touch to say, OK, we need to get the names of the books behind Ger. Any Greek philosophers?
No Greek philosophers. I can't really look around. That's too wanky. But they are real. I can confirm that they're real as opposed to...
fake,
as
opposed to fake?
Yeah. I didn't... We moved house recently and I didn't organise them, but...
What are you going to do? Is it by alphabetical order? Is it colour coding? What is the organisation?
These are all by author. Okay. I'd recommend this to anybody who hasn't... It's an animated story of the Holocaust.
What's it called?
Very, very mouse.
Okay, very good. Check it out for all of our radio listeners. GAA scheduling is the next thing in our performance rankings this morning. So GAA scheduling, yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure about you, Ger, and I'm not sure how much of this you saw over the course of the weekend, but we were having this kind of conversation on Friday. I was accused of being like elitist towards Leitrim, I think, by Adrian on Friday, which was an interesting enough argument. That this kind of build up and this sort of early section of the championship, particularly in football, has just been a little bit underwhelming. I guess we knew that the schedule was a bit light at the weekend, but it kind of feels like this is a common theme that's going to pop up again and again and again. And like, I mean, I think we need to get over the fact that we're having the championship early in the year and the fact that it is going to overlap with other sports. But I do think maybe the GAA and the schedule could be a little bit better to get the best out of themselves, to at least give them the best opportunity to compete with the other sports. And one of those ways may be to actually have the schedule on a week-to-week basis just a little bit better than it is. And I think we're running into a little bit of a scheduling cock-up this weekend. Like, these things could change, I'm sure, but it does look like the fixture list this weekend. Saturday at 7 o'clock, you're going to have Dublin against Kilkenny in the hurling. And then on Sunday, you've got a raft of fixtures. You've got Waterford against Cork and Clare against Limerick. That's a 2 o'clock game and a 4 o'clock game. But essentially at the same time, you've got the Leinster semi-finals taking place in Croke Park. And at 4 o'clock as well, you've got Monaghan against Derry. Like, all those games, especially Monaghan against Derry, are games that you want to watch, and it's clashing with the hurling. Granted, you'll be able to watch it on the BBC and one will be on RTE, I suspect. But I just think maybe looking at that schedule, is there a better constellation of fixtures there where you could say, let's move a couple of these to the Saturday afternoon, to maybe the 5 o'clock on the Saturday, Monaghan against Derry.
3 o'clock?
Or Saturday at 3 o'clock. It feels like there could be like 2 windows there that could be used a little bit better. Like even Limerick...
3, 5 and 7?
Yeah, I think so. And like Limerick against Tippin, the football is at least going to be a contest. That's Saturday at 7 o'clock. I'd watch that if that was on at 5 o'clock. What you have is Laois Galway and hurling at 5 o'clock and Westmeath against Wexford at 6:30. We will have the under-20 football final. But it feels like the conversation we were having 2 weeks ago about the double header of Munster hurling games. Sorry, it was a Leinster game and a Munster game at the hurling 2 Sundays ago, clashing with Tyrone Derry, which was a brilliant football game. It feels like we're sleepwalking into that situation once again this weekend, as if there isn't this overarching controller to say, listen, this is one organisation and there are a lot of other sports on at the moment that are available to people and that will just distract people from watching GAA at the moment. Should we be doing this a little bit better and move the fixtures around to ensure that we give ourselves the best opportunity to get exposure?
Okay, so let's say the answer to that is yes, right? And let's say everybody agrees that the answer to that is yes. How would you fix this weekend coming, for example?
Well, as you say, the 3 o'clock and the 5 o'clock situation on Saturday, I'd fill those with better games. So Monaghan against Derry, I'd move that to the 5 o'clock game on Saturday. And then I would take one of those Leinster Championship games and move them to the 3 o'clock on the Saturday. And yes, not Croke Park. Fair enough if you want to put the Dubs in Croke Park and you're allied to that post-COVID that you need to get the Dubs playing in Croke Park, and Dublin Meath has to be on Saturday in Croke Park. Like,
it doesn't. We know it doesn't.
Put the under-20 final as a curtain raiser in Croke Park on Sunday, and then move Kildare Westmeath out of there. Play that in Tullamore on Saturday at 3 o'clock, and all of a sudden then you've got like a.
Could that be the curtain raiser? Could that be the curtain raiser to the Kildare game? So you'd actually end up with a big crowd.
Yes, sorry, that would make no sense to separate the Kildare people from one another. I just totally forgot the Kildare were in that game. That's exactly what you would do. You put Kildare as the 5 o'clock game on Saturday with the under-20s as your 3 o'clock curtain raiser at the same venue, and then 3 o'clock Monaghan Derry. Like that would be a better situation to the one we have. Like we are nitpicking here. We are going to be able to see the highlights of these games, but we're not going to be able to see the full availability of these games, it seems, because of the way it's set up. And like, it kind of feels like we're approaching this point, or we're at this point right now, especially looking at the Galway-Leitrim result yesterday, where it's like, okay, we're up for the annual conversation around how the provincial championships are crap. You know, this deja vu moment of, let's have this conversation again. But we're actually not going to do that. And I think that the provincial championships have arrived at this point where it's got worse than before, and the provincial championships are being treated with the worst possible thing that any sporting organisation could be treated with, which is just pure apathy. I don't think there's even any appetite out there right now to have the provincial championships a broken conversation.
Well, I think that's probably what a large cohort of people want. They want us not to care enough about this to talk about it, because we are distracted by the other sports. We were distracted by the Munster penalty shootout. We were distracted by the title race in the Premier League. We're going to be distracted by the Champions League final. And by that stage, the provincial championships will be over, and then everything will get good again. the first round of those qualifiers are going to be excellent because you have Division 2 and Division 1 teams up against each other. And then the All-Ireland quarterfinals, semi-finals and final are going to be absolutely sensational this year because you have teams of a similar standard trying to play attacking football. Largely ignored will be how crap the provincial championships have been. Now, in fairness, Cavan played well against Donegal. They made a game of it. Limerick made a game of it against Clare to the point where it went to penalties and they go through. And that's a lower division team against a higher division team. But the superpowers have still been annihilating other teams. Like, when you think about it, Kildare should not be able to beat Louth by that much, considering Kildare have just been relegated to Division 2 and now they're just promoted to Division 2. So the league isn't still anywhere near as strong as it could be for helping teams to get better. And we're going back to the same conversation. The provincial structures are broken. And I think what your fixtures cock-up, as you referred to it this weekend, is serving to do is to highlight that. Like, we're not going to be watching the best games. Maybe they want that. I don't know. Maybe they want people to go to matches instead of watching games on TV. Maybe that's not by accident.
Yeah, it's hard to know. But like, it just kind of feels that there is this resignation that, oh, the Champions League has been great, the Champions Cup has been great, the hurling is great, football can't possibly compete with it, and let's just wait till June. That kind of feels like the mood around it. Like, can we not hope for a little bit better? And like, I know that we tried for a little bit better last year when Proposal B went to Congress and got beaten down because these provincial championships are so important. But the reason why we don't have a better provincial championship, the reason why we don't have a better championship right now is because that Galway versus Leitrim fixture yesterday was prioritised. And that's what the GAA decided last year. And it just kind of feels like, what's the point? Like, if that's the sort of level of priorities that we're seeing in the organisation, then it's very, very hard to hope for a better situation next year when you will still have these clashes and when Gaelic football will still be probably beaten to a pulp by the other better sporting competitions that are happening.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to keep talking about it and reminding people that we had the opportunity and we get the opportunity back again in the future.
The opportunity has been taken, and next year we'll have a shiny new championship, won't we, where the provincial championship is still front and centre. I don't know, it's interesting, and like, it's like this weekend, I suspect on Sunday afternoon people will be like, oh, what's going on here? Why are we not why is Monaghan Derry not in a window of its own, and why is it clashing with the hurling once again? But I guess we will probably have the same conversation next week. So those are the Reds in the performance rankings this morning. In the grandest, the penalty shootout, because apparently this was not something that everybody loved. People thought it wasn't the best way to settle a game. Maybe the format maybe didn't go down well with too many people. I thought it was great. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought, like, the novelty of it probably is the fuel for feeling that way, to be honest, because we haven't seen this. We've seen it once before in the competition. It's such a rarity in the sport. I really enjoyed it. I think Munster fans really wouldn't have enjoyed it for the whole point of it being unbelievably tense. But like, to be in that unbelievably tense position, I think, is just a credit to what the format is. I thought it was excellent.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Would you not have preferred, like, sudden death, five kickers and then sudden death, and have ultimately seen a prop waddle up trying to kick it over from the 22? That would have been better.
That would have been funner, but like, would that not have happened had it not been 6-all?
But there was 3 kickers nominated. I don't know what happens after the 3 kickers. Like, so I think this is the rugby Billy Big Balls getting in their own way again. Oh, I'm so smart, I can flip the penalty shootout for you. Like, well, you can't really, mate. You've actually made it confusing to the point where people in the ground didn't know what the rules were, because, as you say, like, if it had been, there are penalties from the 22 and everybody has to take one, and it's like, your goal, my goal, your goal, my goal, your goal, my goal. I think we would have got to the point where the original one that we got to when, was it Martin Williams missed one for Cardiff? That's my memory of that. And I think that would be the type of thing that would be important to try and get back to, where there's that sense of jeopardy, as opposed to, like, Munster had their 3 best kickers on the field at the end, and it was all set up for them to win. It just, when you have to explain what the penalty shootout is, it feels like it's one step too much. So I can see why it's in amber. Yeah.
Like, I guess you're explaining something that doesn't happen very often. Like, it's happened once before, so you're naturally going to have to explain it. Like, I mean, to be honest, I didn't know what the format was going to be, the thing I was looking forward to most was seeing prop forwards being forced into taking a kick. But that wasn't going to happen. And I thought the way it materialised was pretty cool. And I think, as I said earlier on, Entomac premature celebrations were pretty funny. And like that's the moment that I'll take with me out of Saturday as a great moment.
He knew he was going to win that stage. I think the moment had passed.
Edward Freeman's been in touch to say Eoin showing his Kerry bias. What about the smaller counties? Wexford had a 6-day turnaround before playing Dublin, who got a 6-week run in. Louth also made to play 2 games in 2 weeks, while Kildare had a wait. But yeah, well, like, could he not have just played those Leinster games the weekend just gone, when we had like a very, very light weekend of action, instead of playing them the previous weekend when there was loads of stuff happening? So instead of
they're
like,
going to play again next weekend.
Yeah, but then you push that back a little while. Like, we're ages away from the provincial finals. Like, provincial finals aren't until the end of this month, or the same weekend as the Champions League final, the Champions Cup final. Like, it feels that there are other ways to put. I don't know, maybe not. I haven't dug deep into the week on, week off nature of all of this, but I'm not.
I don't think players mind playing 2 games in successive weeks. That's what you're going to have to do in the qualifiers. Really, they're going to be training those days anyway. Like, you know, and loads of teams have used regular games as a stepping stone to get better. So, like, I don't think that's your Kerry bias. Your Kerry bias shows through in loads of other ways, Eoin.
Speaking of, we move on to the green, and like, is it Kerry bias to put Kerry in the green? I'm not sure. Like, if
they don't win the All Ireland from here, it's disappointing.
What do you mean? Go ahead and give us your hot take.
Number 1 in the power rankings, despite the fact that Cork set a whole campaign in motion to try and throw them off course. And despite the fact that David Clifford was, by his own standards, quiet for about half an hour at the weekend, they still won by 10 or 12 points, right? The game was completely over and done, and yet that was like the best performance that Cork could possibly have put out there. And the bench was absolutely stacked. Their bench was Dublin-esque, like, and I mean peak Dublin. There was like All-Ireland winners, All-Stars, Footballer of the Year contenders on the bench coming in as the cavalry, and the first team was playing well. Their backroom team is a Harlem Globetrotters of who's who of coaching and psychology and tactical and technical. Like, it's now, it's not never, but it's definitely now. This is Kerry's time. If they blow it from here, they've blown it.
Like, it's interesting.
They're so far ahead. They're actually so far ahead of everybody else at the moment.
It's interesting. You could say like a lot of the same things about Dublin last week, especially about like the All-Stars coming off the bench. But like, Kerry depth is the thing we're putting into the green here. I don't think Kerry, in an overall sense, are in the green, and that's not kind of like downplaying Kerry's chances. I think anybody who watched that game on Saturday will know that Kerry were not at their best, and maybe that maybe hammers home your point even more, that they won by 12 points without being close to their best. Like, I mean, David Clifford probably should have come away with 1-4, despite the fact that he was marked out of the game and Cork had an excellent game plan for him. Like, the reality is that on Saturday there were teams at very different stages of their physical development, and this has been something that's been levelled at the Cork hurlers as well over the last little while, that strength and conditioning wise they're just not at the level of Limerick, for example. It really feels like Cork are a level below Kerry in that department as well. In football, like, you see the forwards that they had at the weekend, especially Sherlock and Carl O'Mahony, I think they scored 9 points between them. Absolutely outstanding scores they scored between them, and you'd hope that standard of player will be brought forward by Cork over the next little while, given everything that they can possibly given in terms of SNC, in terms of their preparations, so that they can contend with Kerry, especially in 2 years' time when they bring Kerry back to Cork again, and to try and beat them on that occasion. But for me, there was still a gulf, and that allowed the Kerry depth to show, especially after 50 minutes, when you bring Moran on, and you bring Gainey on, and you bring Paul Murphy on, actual All-Ireland winners, and that completely transforms the game. And I do think that's a really, really positive thing for Kerry, is that they have proven now that they do have a squad that can win the All-Irelands. But I don't think, like what you say there, is that, of course it'd be disappointing if they don't win the All-Irelands. That the same goes for Dublin if they don't win the All-Ireland, and for Mayo and Tyrone. Any team who doesn't win the All-Ireland will be disappointed. But yes, they are favourites. Yes, they are the best team in the country. But I don't think they've moved ahead of the pack after the weekend.
They're miles ahead. They're very, very, very far ahead. When you consider that, like, the Dublin defence, like, we're suddenly saying, oh, they've got a defensive structure because Wexford scored 4 points against them. Like, Wexford are a mediocre Division 4 team. They're not a good Division 4 team. They're a mediocre Division 4 team. And we're like, because they put it up to them last year, we can't overrate the performance. So we're going off what we've seen from Dublin. They have no defensive structure just yet. They don't know exactly what their style of play is going to be. Sure, Brian Fenton looked like he was back to Football of the Year territory, but he was kicking free scores from the 40. Like, it was their A versus B match will be more difficult for the Dubs, right? That was actually local rivals, away from home, tight venue. Kerry blasted through the Cork Challenge.
They didn't blast through the Cork Challenge.
12 points.
They didn't blast through the Cork Challenge for any. Like, that is just not a correct analysis of how the game went.
They won by 12 points.
They got a stranglehold in the game after 50 minutes when, as I say, two physically separate specimens, like the Kerry team and the Cork team, just really showed the difference. No, not at all.
They blew them up.
With all due respect,
annihilated them.
With all due respect, I would listen to Jim McGuinness's analysis over the blasted through analysis, and Jim McGuinness pointed out that Kerry in the first half did still show some of the concerning elements that popped up against Tyrone last year, which is that their attack can come unstuck against the correct defensive plan. Defensively, in the defensive system, I agree with you. Kerry seem to have got really, they've got nailed on this year. They didn't concede a goal chance again at the weekend. And Cork didn't look like coming close to creating a goal chance. It'll be interesting to see how that goes against a better team. But I think coming up against a stacked defence that have a good plan to stop Clifford and to stop their attack, like, Kerry sometimes struggling with it.
Clifford hadn't got injured last year against Tyrone, they would have won. This whole notion that they came unstuck. Tyrone do have a defensive structure. Tyrone did have a defensive plan in place, and still David Clifford was like meteorically, stratospherically brilliant in that game. So I think that, like, Kerry are now in my book, Kerry are 4 to 5 point favourites against everybody who they play from this point forward. And if they lose those games, then it's not just a disappointment that they didn't win the All Ireland. It's like they've blown it. That's how good they are. Their team is so far ahead of everybody else this year at the moment.
I don't think they'll be 4 to 5 point favourites if they're in that semi-final against Dublin. It's Munster against Leinster. Dublin will be at home. I think that's more 1 to 2 point favourites for Kerry, not 4 to 5. Okay. But other than that, it's 4 to 5 against everybody else. The one, like I do by and large agree with your point. Like they're definitely
hammer Mayo
favourites.
They beat Galway with 5 or 6 points. They beat Armagh, Donegal. They beat Donegal. So Monaghan always gives them a game. I think Monaghan might get to 3 points. But they're going to beat all those teams. Well, who am I missing?
What will be interesting is that there will be a 12-week gap between Kerry's two Croke Park appearances, 12 weeks from the league final to an All-Ireland quarter-final. And in that period, they will have played Cork and one of Limerick or Tipperary. There is absolutely a chance that Kerry go into that All-Ireland quarter-final undercooked, and there is an opportunity for one of those teams to come through the back door and cause them serious problems. I still think they win, but to cause them serious problems.
Tyrone are going to cause them serious problems?
Well, Derry or Monaghan are going to be in there as well. And that, for me, is you could make an argument that actually is the team that will cause them the most problems, whoever it is from Derry or Monaghan. Granted, we're just predicting draws here and we don't know how things will go. So for me, that's a slight concern. But they're in the green. The depth really showed at the weekend. Do those people who came off the bench start the next day? I'm not actually sure they do. I think that the team is so strong now that they are in a Dublin-esque position when it comes to depth. And all is rosy in the garden. We're not playing down any chances this morning. Things for this morning is Limerick. They're always in the green. I mean, a strong argument to be made that they shouldn't be anywhere near the green this morning, Ger. What do you think?
I think very surprised that Tipperary were ahead at half-time. Very surprised that Tipperary, as good as they were, and then not that surprised in the way that Limerick managed to get a stranglehold in the game in literally the last 5 minutes. I guess that's the sign of the great team. Like, we're never going to talk about this game again, I think, when it comes to writing the story of this great Limerick team. It has become routine for them to beat Tipperary, even though that was the best that Tipperary could have hoped for. Now, as somebody earlier there was 10 Tipperary players missing or whatever it is, like a huge amount absolutely gone, and still Limerick left them in the game. But I think there's just a touch of complacency about this Limerick team sometimes, and that's fine because they're good enough to always jolt themselves out of it. And that's why I don't think we're ever going to remember this, because when the season is over, we're not going to look back at this as any kind of turning point. I think Tip are gone, and I think that's it's going to be interesting when we get to. I do think that the Munster final is actually a bit of a distraction, and the break in play in previous years has been difficult for teams to just get back straight into All-Ireland semi-final action for. So let's wait and see, but I don't think this has any bearing on anything other than that was a job they needed to do, and they did it ruthlessly in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way, and to have just the ability to turn it on kind of out of nowhere, it seems. I do think that the one legacy point from this is just if Tipperary get their house in order over the course of the next year and come into 2023 with a bit more strength, you're kind of looking back at this year's game and last year's game as a little bit of hashtag narrative going into the Limerick Tip thing. Beyond that, I'm not necessarily sure. Limerick Clare should be a good one this weekend, and hopefully Limerick kind of play their full hand, and it's going to be a bit of a cracker. That is this week's performance rankings. Limerick, Kerry in the green. By the way, before we wrap up, just to tell you can come join the Football Pod live with Paddy Andrews, James O'Donoghue and special guests. We are going to Royal Theatre Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd in celebration of Mayo football, a look at the championship race and much more. That's the Football Pod live in Castlebar on June the 2nd. Tickets are on sale now. You can go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and stay tuned to OTB for details on more shows still to come. After these ads, we're going to be joined by Alan Quinlan to dissect the weekend's Champions Cup action. But first, here's Gary Breen telling OTB's Stephen Doyle that Jesse Marsh is better for Leeds right now than Marcelo Bielsa was, despite their major struggles.
How optimistic would you be of their chances then of staying up this season? I'm sure the supporters are feeling a lot better after seeing that performance there today.
Yeah, they will be, in terms of how quickly it unfolded for them. Meslier making a ridiculous mistake to give Arsenal the lead early on, and then the captain, a two-footed challenge. It's just, when you need your experience, your leaders in your change room, it's going to be a difficult enough game coming here anyway, and I don't think many people would have given Leeds much of a chance in the type of form that Arsenal would have been in. But had they had the 11 men, they could have got something out of the game. I look at the situation now in terms of the teams down the bottom. We know Everton won today. You were hoping Leeds could have done something to take advantage of the fact that Burnley dropped points. So I still think all three of those teams are still in it. Leeds have been clawed back into it again when they looked like they were in a good position. But I think they're in a better position now under Jesse Marsh in terms of how organised they are, how they can stay in the game. I've seen them at times this season against Watford away. They're under pressure second half in that game. It was tightly balanced at the time. They stayed in the game, stayed behind the goal, and then comfortably saw it out. So that bodes well from them. They're learning how to compete at this level and not to give the game up so easily as they were doing under Bielsa. Certain players are coming back. Phillips was there again today. It was a difficult task for him because I thought Arsenal were magnificent in midfield today. But him being back will add to it. You hope that Cooper can recover from his injury. Whether or not Bamford comes back remains to be seen, because he's such an important player, and considering the amount of goals he got from last season in the Premier League, so he's been a huge miss. But listen, with 3 games to go, I've been in this situation, anything can happen, and it's still all to play for.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Paddy, I go, what? He goes, Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. And he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities and the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
18 minutes past 8, you're very welcome back to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning, and we are turning our attention back to the weekend of Heineken Champions Cup action. Heartbreak for Munster at the Aviva Stadium, but Leinster power through to the semi-finals. Alan Quinlan is with us on the line. Alan, good morning to you.
Morning, Eoin. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Did Saturday feel like one of those epic, memorable Irish sporting moments despite the results for Munster?
Yeah, it did. It felt like that for me. It brought back kind of memories of playing in those big games over the years. It was really special to see all the Munster fans there. The atmosphere was electric, and I was pretty proud of the players. I think the effort they put in, the work rate, the honesty, the passion, all that kind of stuff that was just second to none against a really powerful side. So it was a really special day. It was heartbreaking in the end for Munster to lose that way, but just phenomenal effort really from the players, from the Munster players against a team of internationals really. Munster still, they're deficient in certain areas, we know that, but heartbreaking in the end, because I thought the way they went out and played, the tactics they had, they made some mistakes for sure, but just to lose in the end like that was devastating for them.
Fergus Keogh's been in touch to say the penalty shootout was silly, trying to be smart by being different to soccer. What do you reckon? What was your whole take on that in terms of deciding it and that exact format for the penalty shootout?
Yeah, well, if Munster won it, Fergus probably mightn't be in touch. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's very tough for either side. We've only seen it once before, haven't we, with Cardiff and Leicester in 2009. Martin Williams missed that kick, the great Welsh wing forward, and it was very strange. But we all knew that before the game, and we know that's the situation in knockout rugby. There isn't another week to have a replay. I think if either side had scored more tries, they would have went through. There wouldn't have been a penalty kick out. So I don't think there's any point in focusing on that. It's unfair. It's a difficult way to lose a match, but it's part of the rules, and that was it. So it was just heartbreaking for them to lose that way. For either side, it would have been the same for Toulouse. It would have been gutting and devastating for them. They're such an incredibly powerful side, but I just thought Munster got so much right. And just maybe in crucial stages, just things didn't go. Defensively, they were so good, and then you just think one kind of mistake in that second half there off the back of that line out, where Labelle goes through and scores a brilliant try, and that was the winning and losing the game. Once Toulouse got back there and scored a try, I think they believed they could probably go on and win it. They didn't do that in normal time or extra time, but I don't know what's the alternative if nobody wants to see it. Maybe leave a week in between, but then there'd be probably league matches and play a replay. But
no, you have to do it.
Yeah, I think so. You're right, Ger.
Is there a difference though, where like in the Martin Williams, as far as I remember, everybody took one. It wasn't 3 kickers nominated to take 2 each.
Yeah, that was different back then. You had, and they were all right in front of the post on the 22. I think most loose forwards or non-kickers prefer the situation at the moment where you have, most teams have three guys who can kick the ball, and it was different back then. So they've changed it now to take that kind of chaos off people who are not able to kick it and end up running up to try and take penalties. But I have to say though, Ben Healy, it's heartbreaking for him. I know Conor Murray missed one as well, but for Ben Healy, he's probably feels the worst. I was gutted for him, and it's kind of, I remember Ronaldo saying about Portugal a few years ago at the Euros when they had penalties. It's the lap of the gods. It's with God now, and that's kind of the situation with this as well, because you put Ben Healy down to kick those penalties again, he'll kick them no problem. It's just, it happens. It's pressure. It's nerves, whatever the case may be. And look at the fine margins in sport. He could have been the hero. The drop goal right at the end that just went agonisingly wide in extra time could have been the hero. The penalty, I know the previous drop goal, he didn't catch that right at all. It was scuppered a little bit, but just think back to Ronan O'Gara in 2000, missing those kicks against Northampton. He went on after that and nailed drop goals, penalties for years after in huge games. So it's really, really tough for Ben Healy, and it's tough for all of the Munster players because they weren't expected to win, and I think they will learn a lot from this. They learned a lot of how to manage a lead as well. I think the second half, when they were 24-14 up, I thought they stopped playing a little bit. And look, it's understandable. It's easy to kind of say that on the sideline, but I just thought they there was space on the edges, and they probably started slowing things down a little bit and trying to kick again and protect that lead. They were incredibly brave with the performance all the way through up to that point. And I just thought Conor Murray's experience on the field could have. I just thought he was having one of his best games I've seen in a long, long time for Munster, and I just thought that it was. He probably should have been left on the field, and that's no criticism of Craig Casey. Sorry, I'm gone blank there. That's no criticism of him. But look, it is what it is. It was a kind of a special feel, and I think it can be it can have a galvanising effect on the club as well. It showed people, brought back great memories, and memories are no good unless you're challenging for trophies. But I think. And we've seen in the last number of weeks, we've spoken about it on the podcast as well, bit of consistency in selection, trying to be ambitious in the way they play a little bit more. And, against an incredible side, they came up short. The scrum was a massive issue, lads.
Before we get to the scrum, there's a question here about Carberry and why they didn't let Carberry take the drop at the end. Like, I know he'd moved to full back, it seems certainly from the TV coverage, when Ben Healy came on. He is still the most experienced of those players. He is the Ireland international. It did feel like maybe at that moment you put Healy at full back and you go, right, Carberry, you come in and take this because you have more experience. Would that not be a fairly normal thing that would have happened on the field?
I thought about that afterwards, yeah. Even have one of them on either side had the ability to hit either player, because that experience and that bit of nous that he would have had. But Ben Healy's very calm, very composed fella. Normally, he's shown us that in his short career with Munster. So it's, I thought that I was waiting for Carberry to pop up somewhere there. I thought they went for the drop goal a little bit early as well. Toulouse were primed to charge it. The one right at the end where he got it perfectly as regards to strike, it just went wide. I thought it went a little bit early. Could have played under a couple of phases there. So it was, look, if he kicks it, it's the best decision in the world. I just thought they should have waited. They should have kept going for another minute or two. But look, fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, and the effort they had made. Ramos hooked one a few minutes beforehand himself. Toulouse could say the same, that they should have probably tried to build more phases. But just the passion and the heart and the effort against the physical size of the Toulouse players was just sensational. I think Munster had 19 turnovers. Alex Kendellan, Peter O'Mahony was just incredible. But Alex Kendellan, for me, I think he's put himself in contention for New Zealand. This guy only made his debut back in January for Munster, started his first game. I just think he's not someone who's promising for the future. He's the here and now. I just thought his composure the whole game, his physical presence, he's carrying, he's tackling, work at the breakdown. He just had an unbelievable game. Jack O'Donoghue as well. So the Munster back row, the Fineen Wycherley, Josh Wycherley, these guys, they were just brilliant against seasoned internationals. And the scrum was the issue. If Munster were able to hold their own, the scrum, the second try that Toulouse scored, Munster had repelled Toulouse from getting over with in a maul 5 metres out, held them up, get the scrum. All you got to do there is, well, it's easier said than done. Just win your scrum, clear your lines, and it's a big psychological blow for the opposition. Toulouse just pushed them straight off it, and Lebel scores in the corner. There was other scrums. The penalty that Ramos equalised to make it 24-all, that was a Munster scrum as well. So that was the big problem from after just the phenomenal effort they put in. They just couldn't come to terms with that power that Toulouse had at scrum time.
So they'll earmark that over the next little while, Alan, as somewhere where they're weaker than one of the best teams in Europe. Is it a matter of recruitment in order to get better in that department, or can you see improvements within that group? Kendellen, Josh Wycherley, even Fineen Wycherley, in terms of getting to that level over the course of the next few months for this time next year to be able to compete in that department?
Yeah, I think Josh Wycherley will get better. He'll probably get stronger, probably put on a little bit more weight. He's a brilliant footballer around the field. And maybe it's just it's the weight difference as well. You know, when you see what Toulouse could bring off the bench, and Cyril Boy and David Anu and Mauvaka, you know, it's incredible strength and power coming off the bench. John Ryan coming on, and Stephen Archer have you know, manfully kind of stepped up for Munster on every occasion. But you know, when at that level, quarterfinals, semi-finals of Europe, you're very close, if not on a par with international level quality, to win this competition, or to be looking like a team that's going to win it. And you know, if there's any kind of chunk or chink in your armour or weakness there, people will exploit it. And you could see that from the very first scrum. Julian Marchand, the French hooker, just the approach, the body position and the power that was coming through in the middle of that scrum was incredible. So for Munster, you just can't, like, I don't know. Everyone knows this about the scrum situation, that you need way more depth there. You know, Kenyon Knox, the young player there, Roman Salanoa, both those guys, you would have loved to have seen them play more this year, make more impacts. They're still prospects. They've got to step up pretty quickly if they're going to, you know, sort that situation out for Munster. If not, Munster have probably got to go into the market and see if they can get a tight head from somewhere, because, you know, David Nisifora and the IRFU will know that as well. And it'd be a shame in the next year, 2, 3, that a lot of these players, from the experience they've got, the improvements that they can possibly even make more. And, you know, if you had Gavin Coombs, Tyg Byrne, Dave Kilcoyne, Andrew Conway, RG Snyman out in the field, it's probably a different looking team, and it's a stronger looking team. And it'd be a shame if you get this situation 12 months time where, you know, scrum penalties come against you again. So I don't know what they're going to do there on. They've got to try and look at that situation, try and improve within, first of all, and then if somebody comes on the market, or if they can get someone, you know, there's a guy who keeps tweeting us on the podcast, on the Red 78, about Ollie Jaeger in New Zealand with the Crusaders, that he may come back to Ireland. That he keeps saying that when he comes back and plays for Munster, but he originated in Leinster, so maybe he'll come back there. I don't know if he'll come back to Ireland at all, but it's a problem that you know, there's no quick fix solution unless you go out with a checkbook and sign a world-class tight head.
There's no question, Alan, that like the mood music after Saturday is by and large positivity around Munster. Do you think that carries into the off-season regardless of how the end of the season ends, or do they need to get a URC trophy or at least come very, very close to Leinster?
No, they need to come close to Leinster. That's it. And they needed to come close to Toulouse on Saturday. They needed to go show the potential that's there. And like, as I said, nobody expects them to win Europe or even win the URC, because Leinster are on a different level. That's just the reality. But they've got to be in the fight and come close. So they did that on Saturday. And the template, I always think about playing for Munster, is that passion, that drive, that pride in the jersey, all that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, nobody wants to kind of get pats in the back for that kind of stuff and say, well, we stood up and we were great, but we still lost. They want to win, and the Munster fans want them to win. But I just thought Saturday, if it's used in the right way, particularly around the messages that come out from this team, you know, the fans came back, and it was a special day, I think. So for Graham Rowntree going forward now, it's to try and, you know, build on that. There's definitely a number of players, like Jack Daly came on the other day, and probably we haven't seen him in a while. He had a couple of injuries, young back row as well. He was outstanding, you know, outstanding. Thomas Ahern coming off the bench, absolutely brilliant as well. So they made mistakes and, you know, a little bit of naivety at times, as I said, trying to protect the lead. But they can become stronger from that experience if they use it in the right way, and if they kind of get better skillfully, if their game develops a little bit more, so they can use it in a positive way, I think.
Well, just think about that, right? What difference will Mike Prendergast make to this team?
Well, you can see that they have improved in their attack in recent times, and they've shown that in their performances. I think there was opportunities at the weekend that they will look back on and see that they should have went for it. There was space on the edges at times, a lot of the time, particularly in that second half when they actually slowed the game down and kicked. So I think his attack, and I know the way he views the game, he wants to try and exploit those opportunities. Looking for a little bit more width in the game, upskilling all the forwards. You know, I've said this many times about, you know, playing an expansive game isn't about going from winger to winger to winger with the backs. It's about everybody running good lines, little tip-on passes, offloads, catch pass skills, all that kind of stuff, and being able to, you know, get through little gaps and spaces. So I think if their attack was, you know, better, they could have exploited one or two more opportunities on Saturday. So you would hope that that's where he'll want to take them to exploit those opportunities and really go for it and be confident. Confidence and self-belief is really important in that as well, Ger, when you're attacking, that you see an opportunity. And just look at Leinster and Leicester at the weekend, you know, in their own 22, the ability that when James Lowe taps the ball and goes, and Keenan, Jimmy O'Brien are on his shoulder, having the ability to do that and be really confident. And if it breaks down, then say, no problem, we recycle the ball and we can revert to kick it, or we can go again right across the field with accuracy. So I'm not saying he's just going to come and do that perfectly, but I know that's exactly what he would want. And you just think at 24-14, one more score you felt, and like nobody in the stadium felt, oh God, Munster have won it now because they're 10 points up, because Toulouse are so dangerous. But I just think one more score would have psychologically got them over the line.
Well, that was an absolute epic on Saturday. Leinster was less dramatic. I guess the lack of drama, relatively speaking, probably shows the gulf between them and the other sides in this competition. Going to Welford Road, I guess the feeling at half-time was that the game was done. Does the second half give you any concern, Alan, about Leinster's prospects over the next couple of weeks?
None really.
Right.
None at all. You know, when you're 20 points up, it's job done. Of course, Leicester were going to come out and throw the kitchen sink at us and try and react in front of their home fans. I think Steve Borthwick would have kind of read the riot act to him at half-time, but the performance from Leinster in the first half, the way they managed the game, the pace they could put into it, Leicester ended up having more territory, more possession in the game, but it doesn't matter. It's the scoreboard, and that's ruthless efficiency from Leinster. Was very evident from the word go. I thought James Ryan was absolutely outstanding in his performance, as many of the Leinster players were. Gibson Park, brilliant again. So I wouldn't have any concerns about the second half, because inevitably Leicester were going to try and come back and react, and Leinster by and large coped with that pretty well.
It would have been interesting last season to see what would have happened had Leinster actually got that crack off Toulouse late in the competition. It does feel that they've narrowed slightly the gap between these teams, especially between Toulouse and the rest over the course of the last season. Does that make Leinster favourites, especially given the venue this weekend?
Yeah, it does. It makes Leinster favourites. I think fitness-wise they're on a different level, and I think that helped Munster at the weekend as well, how fit they were. I think Toulouse tried to slow the game down a lot. A lot of the big players were, you know, from the high vantage point, I was up on the top of the stands. A lot of them were walking in phase play. I just think that's something that Leo Collins, Stuart Lancaster and the rest of these coaches will identify, that, you know, if you hold on to the ball for a long period, they will get a little bit lazy. They're incredibly powerful and physical. And of course they can cause Leinster problems. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Physically, they're incredibly powerful, and they'll go after Leinster scrum. They'll go after them the maul. And Leinster have got to be on the money physically and win collisions and really stop them at source, because DuPont, Intimac. They got, Munster kind of marshalled them very well at the weekend. But still some subtle little touches at times, and they're wonderful players. So, they'll know that. But I just think Leinster are at a different level here, and I'd be very sure, which is risky saying, I'm a neutral in this now. So my heart isn't on my sleeve with saying this, but I think Leinster could win this game by 15 or 20 points.
Right.
I think they will, the way they hold on to the ball, the efficiency they have around the breakdown, and just probably the contrast and the physical kind of toll in both games. It'll be, Toulouse will be bouncing, obviously winning the game, but I just think Leinster will be fresh as daisies. They'll be better shape physically and mentally for this game. That's not to say that Toulouse won't cause them issues, and on their day, they can be world class. They can score out of nothing, and they showed that a couple of times. So Leinster are going to be very wary of that, but I think Leinster in the driving seat here to not alone to win the semi-final, but to win the competition as well.
Yeah, hopefully it's Rog versus Leinster 2.0 in the final as well. Alan, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan there on the line. You can listen to the Red 78 podcast for more, I guess, reflection on that day for Munster on Saturday, and we'll have more build-up, of course, to Leinster against Toulouse this weekend as the week goes on. It is 8:40. Sorry, go for it, Ger.
Tickets on sale for that game 2:00 today, so I presume it'll sell out over the course of the week. You would think Leinster will be able to fill it for the visit of the best player in the world in a match that Alan Quinlan just said they're going to win by 15 to 20 points. You think they'll get a full house for that, right?
Yeah, well, actually, don't bother showing up. This thing is done. I mean, this is a Champions Cup
you got to show up.
Right, it is 8:40. You're with us here on OTB AM, and Team OTB are taking on Try-a-Thigh this June. It's all in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. This is your home triathlon, Ger. How far out are we? We're like less than a month at this stage, I think.
Yeah, but it's 3 weeks on Sunday.
We saw what the home crowd could do for Munster on Saturday. We're going to get a similar home crowd bounce for you next
9 o'clock on Sunday morning. I'm not sure that there'll be flags and headbands. I stupidly got bounced into doing the whole thing on Friday. Ashley O'Reilly was on. I think you and me are the only ones doing the full thing. I was like, I'm not doing the full thing. It's like, oh. So by the end of that piece, I had agreed to do the full thing. Do you know the distances here are like, it's a 250 meter swim.
Yeah.
So, and I'll say what I said on Friday. I used to be good at maths. In a 50 meter pool, that's up, down, up, down, up. That's it. That's all the swim is, right? And you're actually downstream, bobbing along like a cork because it's in a river. That's the sum total of what Adrian Barry is doing in the triathlon. One leg, up, down, up, down, up. That's what he's training for 2 months for. Just want to get that out there. Don't think enough is being made of this. Then there's a 20k cycle, and then there's a 4k run. Adrian's doing a 250 meter swim. If it was a 1,000 meter swim, if it was a 1.5 kilometers or a mile swim, I'd be impressed. But I just wanted to.
In fairness, he's done that before in the actual sea as well. So he does have like the training done and the experience of open water swimming, but instead he's just going to slalom away down.
I mean, literally be carried by the current.
What is, so, I mean, I presume you've just given up your swimming training at this point because you're painting the swim out to be very, very easy. You're just cycling and running at this point?
I'm not running. I'm not going to do any running. I can't. Me and running don't really. The old knees and the ankles and the toes, I'm too sore.
So how did this happen then? Why are you doing the run and
the cycle?
and the swim?
Well, because I was always going to do the swim and the cycle, and then it turns out nobody else is doing the full thing apart from Aisling. She's actually like healthy and plays sport. Is Tommy not doing this? Did he somehow get away with not doing this, or is he doing it?
I have no idea. I haven't seen Tommy in a long time. He's in America right now. For anybody who wants to find him, Times Square.
Yeah, so, him and the Naked Cowboy.
Yeah, just somewhere around there. I don't know. I'm interested that you've gone for the whole thing. Fair play, I guess, is what you're looking for here. Congratulations on signing up to the full thing. Where can people follow your progress, or what happens next?
Well, we're going to be obviously talking about it over the next couple of weeks. Like the trouble is that I hadn't done any cycling until this week, and so I went out on Friday or Saturday and Sunday, and it's fair to say saddles are sore if you haven't been on them for a while. They cause difficulties. It's the type of difficulty that makes it difficult for your life. Difficult. Does everybody know what I'm talking about here without going too far? Without making anybody puke their breakfast this morning. It's very sore. Saddles are sore. And they cause you difficulties.
And how long did he do on the bike? How many difficulties did he?
20 kilometers. I've done. Yeah. I'm not like I haven't got up to the 60, 70. I'm not Johnny Ward or you for that matter. You've become a very proficient cyclist after your various issues down through the years.
Big issues. So just cycling very, very slowly though. That's the problem here. That's always been my problem. Just cycling too slowly. Always my problems.
What kind of distances are you doing at the moment?
I haven't gone on the bike now in a while. Did a 50k the other day, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Very slowly, obviously. Very flat.
Very impressive.
I love the way when you show up to these things as well, they're like, this is a very flat course. Most people don't have problems. And then you're going up like Mont Ventoux and you're like, what is this? Who has tricked me into doing this? Who has told me that this was actually going to be an actual flat course? How well is Ger going to do? Ask him. It says on my document in front of me. How well are you going to do, Ger?
Well, I'll finish. That's my plan, is to finish and not have a heart attack.
Right. Well,
if those two things happen, I will be very happy for that. My strain level has been increasing slowly over the last week or so on the Whoop. It was like there's a recovery metric, which I was like number one at for the first 3 or 4 weeks of this, which basically means that I wasn't doing any work. It's like a very polite way of going, your recovery is very good there. Would you like to? Would you maybe come on, you can do a bit. And so my strain has been increasing over the last few days as I've actually begun to taper up as opposed to taper down. I'm an expert, world-class taper downer.
It would be very embarrassing now for anybody else who's doing one leg to be beaten by you in any of the legs, right? So you're coming into this no pressure scenario.
Fundamentally, that this is a win-win-win scenario.
You're just going to go all out to crush Adrian in the swim, and then after that, I'm just kind of done. All right, good stuff. I've been asked to give my own prediction here, which I'm not doing because I'm a pathetic excuse for a human being, and I'm not even doing this. So I'm not going to snipe from the sidelines. I'm not going to sit here and sneer on air. I'll do that off air. But thank you very much for the invitation.
I think we should do Ventoux next year.
Yes, let's definitely do that thing. That definitely won't blow up in our face. Go for it, Ger. I will cheer you on from the sidelines. You can.
You said we should do that. You're on the record as saying we should do that.
Yeah, no, I'm sick that week. 100%.
No, we don't know what week it is yet.
People have literally died going up Ventoux. People have literally died going up that place. I wouldn't even make it up the first little climb before.
Yeah, well, we would have a year to do it, Eoin. I'm giving you a year's notice of a year's training.
I'm not signing up to a climb up Mont Ventoux, but thank you for the invitation. Really do appreciate it. We will follow your progress over the next little while. What date is it again? June bank holiday? Triathlon?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. It's on your form there.
It is 8:47. Carl Milani is with us in studio. Carl, how are you getting on?
Good morning, lads. How are things?
Yeah, very well.
Good.
I heard your dulcet tones on Galway, Leitrim.
Yeah, Galway impressive in the second half and 4 goals coming from the bench, so they'll be quite happy, I think. Leitrim stuck with them now actually for quite a while. First 25 minutes was pretty competitive with Galway's squad told towards the end, so that should be an interesting Connacht final now, Galway and Roscommon, 3 weeks time, so I think that's going to be a cracker, and both teams will probably fancy a run, I think, at the All-Ireland series as well. Definitely the winner of that game will fancy themselves in the latter stages.
Yeah, they blazed past them with a score of 4-20 yesterday. That obviously was just putting a bit of gloss on the scoreline at the end.
Yeah, it was. Patrick Kelly got 2 goals off the bench. They never stopped really. Shane Walsh and Damien Comer were probably a little bit more subdued than they might have thought, but they will be very heartened, I think, by the fact that their bench was so impactful in the game, and we all know that teams need squads now to push on, especially if the games are a little bit tighter for them down the line, and I think they're building really nicely, to be honest. I think that they could be in the shake-up later this year, Galway. They'll probably be aiming to get to a semi-final, and then from that stage on, who knows.
So what are we starting with this morning?
Well, let's start with the hurling from yesterday, because the Limerick hurling manager John Kiley says his side will have to improve if they are to retain their All-Ireland title. The reigning champions secured their 3rd successive Munster Championship win following a 321 to 23 points win over Tipperary yesterday. In football, Donegal through to the 10th Ulster final in 12 years. They were 216 to 16 points winners over Cavan, and as mentioned, Galway beat Leitrim in Connacht by 420 to 9 points to set up a Connacht final against Roscommon. Action this evening in hurling sees the Leinster under-20 final take place. Wexford against Kilkenny. That's at Carlo's Netwatch Cullen Park, and throw-in is at 7:30. Manchester City's lead at the top of the Premier League table is 3 points this morning. That's with 3 games left to play. They dished out a 5-0 hammering to Newcastle yesterday. Everton moved out of the relegation zone thanks to a 2-1 win over Leicester. Leeds are now in the bottom 3 after a 2-1 loss to Arsenal, while West Ham beat Norwich by 4-0. 4 of the top 5 sides in the SSE Electricity League Premier Division are in action here at home tonight. Leaders Derry City host third place St Pat's from 7:45, and at 8 in Tala, second place Shamrock Rovers take on 5th place Sligo Rovers. In golf last night, Rory McIlroy had to settle for a 5th place finish. That was at the Wells Fargo Championship. He carded a final round of 2 under par 68. He was on 4 under overall. There was 4 shots behind the eventual winner Max Homa. England's Matt Fitzpatrick was among those in a tie for second on 6 under par. While on the Champions Tour, fantastic final round from Padraig Harrington, not quite enough to land the Mitsubishi Classic title. He carded 6 back 9 birdies. That was in a final round of 8 under par 64. His 10 under par total was 1 shot behind the eventual winner Steve Flesh. Darren Clark ended on 4 under par. In Formula 1 last night, Red Bull's Max Verstappen has cut Charles Leclerc's advantage at the top of the Drivers' Championship to 19 points. That's after winning the Miami Grand Prix. The title holder crossed the line ahead of the current standings leader Lewis Hamilton, finishing in 6th, while Carlos Sainz was in 3rd for Ferrari. And finally, in news of racing, there's a 7-race card at Roscommon today. The first goes to post there at 4:25.
Plenty of reaction into our performance rankings earlier on. We've got Conor Joyce saying Kerry aren't as far ahead of everyone as people think. Tyrone will clip them if they meet later in the championship. And P.Well says 74. Kerry beat a poor Division 2 team after a 50-minute arm wrestle. That performance proves nothing. I mean, Ger, the people out there are against you. It seems like you're hyping up Kerry for unnecessary reasons.
Got the WhatsApp saying, here, Eoin is losing another debate about Kerry. I'm telling you, you guys are massive favourites at the moment. It's true. The rest of the country knows it. Ask an honest broker here. Call. Kerry are the best team in the country by a mile at the moment. And if they don't win the All-Ireland, it'll be a massive, crushing disappointment.
I agree.
By a mile?
I think so, yeah.
By a mile?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Well, who's closest to them?
Dublin.
Based on the win over Wexford?
The team that they have,
let's
the All-Ireland winners.
Let's see after next weekend when the Leinster semi-finals take place, but I think at the moment it's Kerry's to lose, no doubt. As I said, I think Galway, Donegal maybe, they weren't overly impressive yesterday, were they? But they still have it in them, I think, to produce one big display, maybe in an All-Ireland quarter-final, if they get there. That they do have that in the locker. Derry and Monaghan. Derry are in good form. Monaghan probably going in under the radar a little bit, but there's no question that Kerry are quite a distance out in front.
Yeah, and they don't even have to peak for another month.
Well, you say that, but is that not the thing that caught them last year? The fact that they had this time sitting on their hands.
Last year was the injury to David Clifford.
That was a reason. That was a reason. It wasn't the reason.
It was literally it. They would have won that game.
You're painting them as this team that are miles and miles in front of the rest. If they were miles and miles in front of the rest, then an injury to one player won't bring him back to the pack that significantly. There are other reasons that have tripped them up in the past, and it's not just an injury to their best player. It is a psychological element to it, and I do believe last year they went a little bit cold after such an amount of time off, and I think that could hamper them a little bit this year. I'm not saying that they're going to lose a game because of it. I just think, let's cool the jets on this whole. They're miles and miles in front of everybody else. Yes, of course they are All-Ireland favourites.
They didn't have the strength and depth last year that they do this year. That's the other thing. This year they definitely have much more strength and depth. They've developed that.
Better.
And their defensive structure is much better as well.
That's got better
exactly.
as well. So,
come on, it's like
so they can
got all the ingredients on.
Yeah, so they've gone from not winning the All-Irelands to being All-Ireland favourites. I don't think that takes them from being that doesn't take them to being clear of everybody by distance. This is a conversation I dare say that Ger would like to have at some point tomorrow and the day after and next week and the week after. So you'll hear this again as we will play the hits. Carl, great stuff. Thanks for popping in. We're turning our attention back to the weekend's Premier League at 8:53. Andy Mitten is with us on the line. Andy, good morning. How are you getting on?
Good morning. Can't you ask me about the All-Ireland rather than Manchester United? Can't we have a nice chat about the teams in Croke Park or whatever you want to talk to me about?
Happily, I would love to get your thoughts on that, except for the fact that Manchester United, for the rest of us anyway, are still pretty interesting and almost getting more interesting week after week after week. We were kind of wondering earlier on if this could possibly be the lowest ebb, but we've wondered this quite a bit over the last few months. Do you feel that they're at least close to that point where this is the lowest point?
it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And losing 4-0 at Anfield is bad enough, but Liverpool are a considerably better team than Brighton and Hove Albion, who've not won a single game in this calendar year, had a terrible record against Manchester United despite being a successful club. And the performance on Saturday was disgraceful. It was a disgrace to the 3,000 travelling fans. It wasn't a huge surprise when Manchester United go behind, as they tend to go behind early in matches, and really struggle to get back into matches. So the idea of getting in the top 4 in the Champions League, that disappeared a couple of weeks ago. I think now United have just got to try and get into the Europa League, that top 6 finish. I think the Europa League is actually a decent competition. I think that's been shown this year. But no, this is a really, really bad time for Manchester United. And when United look at the main rivals, they see Liverpool in a European Cup final, Manchester City. Well, they got knocked out. So United fans are getting amused by Real Madrid doing so well, but it all takes attention away from the real significant problems that Manchester United have at the moment in what has been a massively disappointing season. It's going to be the lowest points total. I worked it out at the weekend since 1990 when the team finished 13th. But at least United won the FA Cup that year. I remember that season and the bright end to the season because the team was still in the Cup. There's so many negatives.
It did feel maybe a few months ago that Manchester United could still cling to the fact that there was maybe the bones of a squad there, that the regeneration would take a while, but maybe it would take a couple of seasons. I think 4 transfer windows is something that Ranić has mentioned actually quite recently. Does that look optimistic at this point, Andy, that 4 transfer windows is all it's going to take?
Nobody knows the answer to that question because in the last 9 years, there's been this idealised version of what's going to happen with Manchester United. And I remember Louis van Gaal coming in and saying, judge me after 100 days. And after 100 days, it wasn't great. And he wanted a bit more time and he got time, got a couple of years, made lots of changes. They didn't work out. So I have very little faith in the recruitment process at Manchester United unless there's a significant upturn in that even if players do come in, you hear fans saying, get rid of the deadwood. But I've heard the same thing for 9 years. United have recruited poorly and brought the wrong type of players in for the managers, the wrong type of system that the managers have been using. Yes, the appointment of Erik ten Hag will be greeted with optimism, just as every single appointment has been post-Ferguson, although fans were more circumspect about David Moyes, for example. And he's a good manager, but I wonder whether it's too much for one man, especially when you see how high the bar has been raised by the excellence of Liverpool under Klopp and Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. And then you've got Chelsea. I know they've got their off-field issues, but they're a current European and world champions. So I'd expect an improvement for Manchester United because it cannot be so bad given the players that are at the club, and some will go in the summer and some will come in, and each will be greeted again with great. We're on the way back, but it's all about results. Ralf Rangnick is clearly a bright man who is a good overseer of football, but I can't pretend that his appointment's been a success. The football and the results have been dreadful under him. So Ten Hag, I absolutely wish him well. He'll get lots of support. Done a great job at Ajax. But Manchester United has been a talent shredding machine for players, for managers as well. And I'm an optimist who thinks things will get better. But I'm also extremely sceptical because of what has happened at Manchester United in recent years.
Like the talent shredding is an interesting phrase because it seems that the latest person who's kind of been under the microscope on that talent shredding conversation has been Raphael Varane, especially after the weekend's performance. Is he indicative of that point that you made there, people who arrive at the club and essentially look worse when they wear the shirt of Manchester United, or is that actually indicative of poor recruitment?
I think Varane's a good player. I realise I'm saying that at the moment after he's had a terrible game like the rest of them at Brighton. And I'm sure part of him is thinking, I could be working on another Champions League final here. He would have stayed in that Madrid team. He's had a poor first season because injury has hampered him. But I still maintain he's a good player. I saw him play lots in Spain. And I do think he'll come good at Manchester United. I think potentially he's the best central defender there, and by a distance as well. Right. But clearly other factors come into play, like confidence, like team selection. He's playing in English football for the first time. So he's not one I would be looking to move on, saying this is an absolute disaster. I know exactly why Real Madrid sold him, and it was nothing to do with his talent. It was more about getting money in for him. They offered him a new contract. They were quite half-hearted in the new contract that they offered him. So he's been poor. He's had some decent games as well, but he's not my main concern.
Who else in that back four then are you looking at in terms of those that you would keep at the club next season?
Next question, do you want names here? Because I'm struggling. I think Maguire's had his worst season probably in professional football. But it's only a year ago that we were talking about his importance and how much he'd been missed in the Europa League final in Gdansk, was at the end of May last year. I think he can actually get back to a decent level. Is he a world-class central defender? I've got my doubts about that. Victor Lindelof has got his virtues. He had a poor game at Brighton. And you're comparing them to players like Virgil van Dijk and the lads at Manchester City, and there's little comparison at the moment. The four fullbacks, well, it's been a massive problem area. At right back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka has declined as a player. Diogo Dalot's got some virtues, but again, compare him to the players, compare him to Trent Alexander-Arnold or the fullbacks we saw at Chelsea, at Old Trafford last week, at Manchester City, Cancelo, who's someone Manchester United looked at. And again, they're way short of that level. I think Luke Shaw's a decent player. He's not had his best season at all. Form, injury. Alex Telles, he looks short of the mark for Manchester United. And strange things have happened and the players have got back to a much better level. So the confidence is down on all of them. I wouldn't write all of them off. United can't go out and buy an entire new defence in the summer. That's just not going to happen. But it's been a poor season for the defence, as we see by the number of goals that United have conceded. I think the goal difference is +1 after 37 games. I mean, that's absolutely atrocious for Manchester United. +1.
Yeah.
Andy, what is realistic in terms of the number of players who might come in the summer? Because the fans will want 20 new players, and they want them, every player who gets linked between now and whenever the transfer window closes, that the agents are doing jobs on. They will want all of those players in to try and somehow give a sense that this can happen, this turnaround can happen quickly. But what's realistic? Is it 6 maximum, 7 maximum?
I think the case is helped by so many players being out of contract and leaving. So that helps the job of Erik ten Hag. We know that Edinson Cavani is gonna leave. We know that Phil Jones, Jesse Lingard, Paul Pogba's probably going to leave. A lot of players are going because they're out of contract. Juan Mata, Nemanja Matic just said that he's going. So I'm already up to 6 or 7 there. And they're going to be replaced if Manchester United are going to play European football next year, which looks likely. You need a squad for that. So maybe a couple come up from the youth ranks. One of the few bright spots has been the youth team. They're playing in the final at Old Trafford on Wednesday. Well over 60,000 tickets have been sold. That's incredible. But they're 18-year-olds. They're not coming straight into the first team. I'm thinking more about players like James Garner, who's on loan at Nottingham Forest. And then players are going to come in. You're not going to be getting 7 players coming in on huge fees at all. United missing out on the Champions League will mean the budget is smaller. Players can come in on free. That's become more normal. United can still pay big wages. They're going to be losing players on big wages. I think Cristiano Ronaldo will probably stay, in part because nobody could match the contract that he's got at Manchester United, and in part because he's actually been a success this year. Although I can totally see the argument about United having to change the system of play when he plays. and it was a surprise. The coaches had to rip up and start again because it was just put on them. Do you want him? Yeah, okay. And that all happened within a day back in August. So there'll be new signings, and as you say, each of them will be greeted with the optimism and the hope that these players can contribute to a brighter future for Manchester United. We've been there so many times, and I can remember, and I'm as guilty as any fan, when Bastian Schweinsteiger signed, or Morgan Schneiderlin signed, or Angel Di Maria signed. I could list 20 names who've come in, and the majority of them were not a success at Manchester United. And if Ten Hag wants to bring in players who are not the darlings of social media, I'd have no problem with that. He's going to be the one making the decision here. He's going to be the one who decides who comes in, and more power to his elbow. He will be the manager of Manchester United. The current manager, Ralph Rangnick, it just not worked out as a football manager. Clearly a bright man, but he's not working. Look at the results. They're absolutely atrocious. Manchester United have lost 5 games away from home now on the bounce, and lost them in some style as well. Conceded 60 goals. It's absolutely dreadful.
What did you think when you saw the reports linking Paul Pogba to Manchester City and the subsequent reports that Paul Pogba turned down Manchester City?
Well, I'm a journalist. I wrote a big piece on Paul Pogba last week with lots of inside information. So when I saw that report, I checked them out. I checked it out on Saturday, and I got told, yeah, it's true, there is interest. And I checked it out again this morning, and I got told, yeah, that's also accurate. He's not going to Manchester City. Do you want to see my phone? I'm not going to show you. Tell him that. So I wouldn't be stunned if Paul Pogba went somewhere and was a success, because I saw him playing for France in the Euros last year, in a better team system, with better players around him, with a better manager who's got more belief in him. There's a good player in there. But on a poll on United We Stand last week, 95% of those fans said enough's enough, go. And only 5% said give him another chance. The facts are that there is a contract offer for him. I don't know what Erik ten Hag's view of Paul Pogba is. He'll be the one making the decision. If he decides Paul Pogba is a world-class player and I want him at Manchester United and I'm going to speak to him and set out my vision for him, then that's on him. If he decides that he'll go with the view of most Manchester United fans, then that's his decision as well. In all the time he's been at United, it's been underwhelming for Paul Pogba. There's mitigating circumstances. I think the fact that there's been such a breakdown in communication, lack of relationship with the fans, is partly on the club as well. And the dream he was sold has not materialised either. And I spoke to a lot of people about Paul Pogba last week for an article I did on The Athletic. And one of them said he's a complex character, but he's an energy giver. He's not someone who takes energy out of the team. But when things are going badly, he can bring people down with him. And there were two sides to his argument with Jose Mourinho. That didn't benefit any of the parties. But when Paul Pogba was playing well and on song, he can be a great player to have. And United fans have seen glimpses of that, but nowhere near enough. There's a huge issue with consistency around Paul Pogba, especially when you compare him to the consistent players at the teams who are at the top of the table for a reason. And in many ways, he's a microcosm of why Manchester United are so poor. It's because he's so inconsistent, and so are so many other players.
So why were Manchester City interested in him then for those reasons? Like, I mean, you say that he's not of the level consistently that some of the top clubs would want, but yet, like you're saying, that there was genuine links between him and Manchester City.
Well, that's on Pep Guardiola, and he's got a pretty good track record. Doesn't always get it right either. I think he signed Chigrinsky from Ukraine for Barcelona, who definitely didn't work out for Barca. But he's a good judge of a footballer in the main. And maybe he saw something. Maybe he thought that playing in a system, which Manchester City obviously do, with more discipline, with his confidence, or maybe he's more vengeful and he wants to win. and win trophies. I mean, this is a man in the prime of his career. He's 29. I wouldn't say he's wasted 5 years, but it's 5 years since Manchester United last won a trophy. And I remember seeing his family outside the Europa League final in Stockholm, and they were so invested in that. They were so up for it. It's just a shame that it's come to this. And I keep using the word shame and sadness. There's two sides again with all of this, but that's how it is for Manchester United right now.
Do you think that there's a core of a team there that Ten Hag can build on, or will the core of the team that ultimately brings Manchester United success be brought in over the next couple of years? So are Bruno and Rashford, are they going to be foundational pieces for Ten Hag?
The stock of both of them is as low as it's been at Manchester United. A new manager can change. We've seen players and clubs and teams turn pretty quickly when you think that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember speaking to Jamie Carragher about Liverpool 5 years ago, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel for him. But within a year, Liverpool looked far more of a force than they did do. And these players want to succeed. They want to be successful. Even Paul Pogba, who wants to be successful. And a new manager should be able to motivate his team. That's a key job of a manager. It's something where Ralph Rangnick has failed. And you might look at players, and there's so many players in the history of football who've looked completely spent and then have looked so good when they've had a new manager, when they've got a good runner in a team, when they're more confident. I'd love Marcus Rashford to be a success for Manchester United. Again, at the moment, and I said it on one of your shows in February, I wouldn't be surprised if he left. And the reaction to that was, what? Well, my sources were good at the time. I still wouldn't be surprised if he left. But if he stayed, and I think United would like the idea of him staying, but again, this is on the manager. The manager's going to be making these decisions. And one problem Manchester United have got is that the players earn so much money, they're actually really unattractive to other clubs because there's no value for them. These are players who earn hundreds of thousands and they can't afford them. There's better players out there for a lot less money.
Can I ask you one question, Andy? If Ten Hag came in and had a complete clear out of players, like, so you've talked about the players who are out of contract and are going to leave, but say he decided he didn't think Bruno and Rashford were foundational pieces and they went as well this summer for whatever deal they could get for them, how much patience will the fans have if the team that takes the field next season isn't good enough to compete for top four, but is at least trending in the right direction? Because there was a bit of a period at Liverpool just now. It's a different scenario because Klopp comes in mid-season, but the team was really bad for the first 3-4 months, and they had loads of injuries because he was ratcheting up the physicality of the training. And it was the next season before the signings that he made started to have significant impact. And even the following Christmas after that, when they started to spend the Coutinho money. What time frame does Ten Hag need to show progress? And would actually ripping the bandage off and getting rid of a load of players help to buy some patience from the United fans?
I think the fans are quite patient at matches. Not online. Online's a real problem. You get an extreme reaction when United drop points in a match. But your general point is right. The expectations are now much lower because the team is so bad. Every manager's been supported in real life, and he'll feel that because I don't think Erik Ten Hag's going to be trolling Twitter. He's going to feel a lot of love and support at the stadium. But there's got to be minimum expectations here. If United are 17th by December, there's clearly going to be a major problem there. If United are actually showing some shoots of recovery, if a couple of his signings are looking encouraging, he'll be supported all of the way. I think if you ask Manchester United fans and people watching this right now, do you think the team will win the league next year? I think 90% would say no. Do you think the team will be in the top four next year? The percentages are starting to change a little bit because fans are... They tend to be optimistic, especially at the start of the new season with a new manager. And a lot of those players still at the club, they are good players. It's baffling to everyone how bad that they've been this season. This idea of getting rid of everybody, well, Louis van Gaal tried it and it failed. He had this massive talent purge and he got rid of good players. And at the sign, every single one of them was waved out of the club. Raphael, the right back, Darren Fletcher, Johnny Evans, good players who went for nothing. Johnny Evans is a really good player. I'm not saying that he's Vidic or Rio Ferdinand, but I think the fans have got to look at themselves as well as an element that just signing new players is somehow going to improve things. It's going to be another plaster, you said, to stick over a problem position. You know, bring Declan Rice in and then that's the midfield sorted. Well, history's shown it doesn't work like that, then it needs to be more than that. And I think one of the things Ralph Rangnick is touching on is United are signing the wrong type of players. And I think he's got a point there. I think I'd more listen to him when he's talking about strategy, although he's not made many decisions. Some fans seem to think that he's this great overseer firing the lead scouts. He's not. He's just not. Let's stick to the facts here. His primary job is to coach Manchester United's first team. And at the moment, he's not done a good one at that. But he does have good ideas in terms of the type of players which the club should be signing, but he's not going to be the manager. So he's going to have very little influence there. It's going to be on Ten Hag, who is absolutely forming his opinions at the moment. He's in constant contact with Manchester United. He's going to be under huge, huge pressure. And he has to start well, because if as I said, he's 17th, there's going to be big problems, but there'll be support for him and there will be patience for him, especially at Old Trafford.
All right. Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Andy Mitten there on the line after another tough weekend for Manchester United. It is 9:15 on this Monday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by Anthony Moyles in studio to review the weekend's football championship action. But before that, here's Paddy Stapleton on Sean Finn being the country's best cornerback. See you in a few.
You mentioned Sean Finn there already. For me as well, a player that really stood out there right at the end. What sets this guy out from any other cornerback we've seen? Like, he arguably is the best cornerback in the country, not just this year, but the past few years.
Oh, well, I think it's 4 All-Stars in a row now, so he kind of hands down probably the best in the country, and he plays on a great team, but he's one of the reasons they're great. He has a variety of physical assets before we go anywhere else that it's very hard to match, because he's low to the ground, but he's very, very strong. He's as probably strong a man as you'll see playing hurling. Apart from and you don't think a man as strong as that is going to be as pacey. So as fast as the guy as you're going to put in on him, he's still going to be getting there. And you rarely see a ball out the side, a perfect ball, where he's beaten by more than 2 or 3 yards to the ball. And then when his opponent has it a corner forward, he's always shoving him out the way. His feet are so good. He never gets wrong stepped. You never see a guy going in past him because his footwork is so good. And then I think he looks like he uses a 38-inch hurley, because we saw it there a couple of times during the match. The amount of blockdowns he gets in and his timing and his reading of the game are second to none. So I don't know. And then that's before he even get his use to the ball, which is always top notch. So brilliant hurler.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
Paddy, I go, what? It was Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. As he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Yeah, you're welcome back. Just to tell you what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio throughout the day. We've got from 1 o'clock Ray Boom Boom Mancini as part of OTB Gold. John Giles' all-time 11 coming up at 3 o'clock, and in the Mount Rushmore is on Waterford from 4 o'clock. Jason Quigley then from 6 o'clock, and of course Off the Ball is live on your radio as ever from 7 o'clock this evening. Just ask your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, and you can of course listen to OTB AM as a radio show live every morning on OTB Sports Radio and the OTB Sports app. Meanwhile, I'm just going to tell you that you can come join the Football Pod live with Paddy Andrews, James O'Donoghue and special guests. We are going to the Royal Theatre Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd in celebration of Mayo football, and look at the championship race and much more. That's the Football Pod live in Castlebar on June the 2nd. Tickets are on sale now. You can go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and you can stay tuned to Off the Ball for details on more shows to come. We are turning our attention back to the weekend's football. Anthony Moyles is with us in studio. Anthony, how are you getting on?
I'm good. Owen, yourself?
Yeah, very well. Let's start. Say it again.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry. Let's start with yesterday's game between Donegal and Cavan. This was like one of these where people were like, 2020, is this going to be a significant factor in things or not? Is this just one of those weird COVID results where Donegal kind of bottled it on that day? I think for the majority of yesterday, there was kind of the sense that Cavan have something that is a bit kryptonite to Donegal.
Yeah, it probably was. Cavan surprised me. They played some great football. They probably belied a lot of the I suppose the pre-match kind of thoughts on what they would or wouldn't do. They were very direct, Owen, right from the throw-in. You could see their intent on putting the ball in as quickly as possible. A young forward line, but a forward line that had no fear, taking on shots that otherwise you might say, oh, it's not really the percentage shot, but they just went for it. They caused Donegal lots of issues with regard to that direct ball, quick transition of the ball from kind of the half-back line, their own half-back line, into their full forward line. And before Donegal could kind of get that blanket set, they knew they had to try to beat it by kicking the ball. So they caused them major problems. I thought they were, extremely unlucky with regard to the two goals, two horrible goals, two, massive defensive errors that really put a bit of daylight in between the two teams, albeit that Donegal probably could have had another couple of goals, even one or two in the first half, if they'd just given that extra pass to a man inside. So, Cavan will be happy. They're brilliantly coached, I have to say. They're very, very good. I think they last year was a bit of a low after obviously the highs of the previous year, and I think that took its toll. But he has them back now buzzing, and he has them back moving well. And they'll go into that Tailteann Cup, I would imagine, as firm favourites to kind of win it. I saw them referencing obviously that look, it's good for the players that in his squad to get as many games as possible, and ultimately that's what the Tailteann Cup is there for. So if they can go and win that, well then they'll be in fine fettle for next year. But you could see how disappointed they were after the game. They really put a massive effort into it, and the camera switched to McKiernan, Gerald McKiernan, who was unbelievable yesterday, really, really good in the second half, and who became a massive focal point for them throughout the game. And he was absolutely sick, because I think they really fancied themselves of taking Donegal, and I'd say with the idea that Donegal maybe had one eye on the final, and they could have done it. They were close enough to it, but just not close enough.
When you say Cavan look really well coached, what do you see in their performance that tells you that?
Well, just the way they set up, I thought, you know, they moved the ball. So Cavan over the last, if you remember, 3, 4, 5 years ago, Cavan would have been a slow build-up type team as well. You know, quite slow, quite methodical, very lateral. Lots of fellas behind the ball, that kind of an idea. Good inside forwards. But this, I saw there's been a definite change in the sense of the last number of years, but certainly yesterday, where they decided, okay, we just need to get beyond that blanket defence before it reaches its end point. So before the likes of, you know, the various different Donegal players can get back and shore things up, they just kicked the ball long and kicked it very accurately into a full forward line who are fast, pacey and strong. And, you know, they didn't mess about with it then. You know, they took their opportunities when they got it. So, look, I mean, the fellas just turned, took shots, took players on, and caused Donegal havoc. Now, really caused them a lot of problems. Like, it wasn't until Eoin Bon Gallagher went in and picked up Smith in the second half that kind of really started to show, because he was causing absolute mayhem inside and full forward. Big young guy, very good off. Well, look, I mean, he kicked the score off left and right yesterday, but his physical power and just his directness was causing major issues. So there's probably a lesson there. Like, teams will look, Monaghan or Derry will kind of look to themselves and say, if they get through, whoever comes through will say, right, can that directness cause Donegal more issues? Now, there wasn't really any major goal opportunities for Cavan. Like, they cracked one off the crossbar, if you remember, and that was probably good really save. Yeah, it was a good save. Yeah, exactly. It was a great save. He just got his hands up and bopped it off. So a little bit more composure in that area. Could it have been a goal? I think Cavan needed a goal or two, you know, and Donegal ended up getting them. Cavan definitely needed a goal or two. I think for that kind of supremacy that they had in that first off, if they'd been 4 or 5 maybe ahead, I think that would have been good, because they were always going to fatigue a little bit, and because they were defending and then running so hard and kicking those long balls and trying to get up and support, and ultimately nearly giving the kick out away. That was probably my big thing. I just thought that was probably a tactic that they needed to readjust, because Patton, he's really good at getting his kickouts away, but he was getting them off very, very easy. And Cavan, they decided once or twice to push up and they caused issues, but I think a lot of the time they just said, look, we'll let them get the kick out away and we'll defend it from about midfield back. And that's all fine, but you know, when you're constantly facing, you know, the kick out and fellas coming, it can get draining, and it can just really, really cause you. And if you don't have the bench then to come in and kind of lift it again, it's tough. You know, rather than kind of, if you're winning the ball higher up the pitch from a kick out or whatever it is, and you're putting pressure on them there, you're allowing their defence to have a rest, have a bit of a break. They can take they can dictate the speed and the tone of the game, by going lateral or increasing speed. So I think that was always going to catch them. But look, Cavan can be massively proud of the way they played, and you know, as I said, I think Monaghan and or Derry will look and say, right, can that direct ball, will that be able to reap rewards for us against that Donegal defence the next day?
How good are Donegal? How deep can they go here?
I don't think, Ger, they were in any kind of you know, major danger of losing the game, you know, after all I just said there about Cavan. I don't think there were one or two. There was a couple of opportunities in the first half, I don't know if you remember, but where there was men inside kind of screaming for the ball, and if an extra hand pass had gone in, they would have walked in 1 or 2 goals. So they probably, like, I mean, they ended up getting 2 goals, the 2 fortuitous goals, I suppose, but they really probably should have had another 2 goals outside of that, possibly 3. So They impressed me yesterday. I've been kind of giving out about them a bit, about this kind of lateral play, and where they run towards the sideline and then the man will cut in from the sideline and just take the ball. And also this kind of play that they were during the league, where they're coming out for their defence and a man will come to meet the player and essentially nearly take the ball off him from the area that he's already in. Now, I didn't see as much of that yesterday. The lines of running that they did, they scored some absolutely beautiful points where fellas came at brilliant angles, really, really hard, really fast, and took balls whereby it was nearly impossible for the Cavan man to actually defend it. So it's like in basketball where you're screening a player, you know. So Michael Murphy has the ball, a player comes by him very, very close to him, he pops the pass to him and then screens the defender away. It's very, very difficult to defend that, and they did that on numerous occasions, and they did it really, really well. The second half they learnt big time. I think it was a slight subtle change to tactics, but what they did in the second half First of all, they put Eoin Gallagher back in at full back, which was a big move. But second half, they spread their forward line really, really wide. So they hugged the touch lines, and obviously they just put Murphy in full forward. So that essentially allowed Murphy to be able to dictate and be able to call for balls in. And they went a bit more direct then because they had him in there. So they played the ball up to around the full or midfield, a little bit beyond midfield, and then obviously with him inside pointing where he wanted the ball, that gave them massive fulcrum. McBurty wasn't really doing it in the first half, because it was all very tight and it was all a bit like there was fellas getting hands in, and they knew Cavan would get players back. So essentially what they said second half was, well, you're going to try to do that, we're going to spread really far out. So they put McBurty on one sideline, I can't remember who was on the other corner, but they spread the play, they made the pitch as big as possible, and then by doing that, of course, it separated out the Cavan backs, and it made those runs and those areas of pockets of defence harder to clear up. But I think if they can marry things a bit more, Ger, with regard to being a bit more direct, like people are calling for Murphy to be in full forward. He does an awful lot out around the field. He dictates tempo. He's a big presence out around there. And I think the full forward thing, especially at the start of a game where things are very, very tight, defences are keeping it tight, there's a lot more players back, fellas are obviously fresh, I wouldn't necessarily start him in full forward. I'd wait till you get that kind of game where it's starting to open up, players are starting to tire, then I'd plonk him in full forward and say, okay, just like what they did yesterday.
Yeah, the Eoin Bond thing is really interesting, because when I look at that piece of analysis, I'm thinking to myself, that's going to hamstring Donegal in some big game this year if he's been brought back, because like that half back line, himself, McHugh, Mogan, that's a really dangerous half back line for any other team to have a lot to think about. Whereas all of a sudden, if they're losing one of those guys to go back and mark the best inside forward, that's going to be something that's going to separate Donegal from the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah, it is, because he was excellent yesterday going forward, especially in the first half. Like, I mean, his ability just to turn the gas on is unbelievable. He looks like he's moving fast, and then he moves even faster. So McHugh, I thought, was quiet yesterday, and McHugh, though, if you watch it, they kept trying to bring McHugh into the full forward line or into the full back line. If you watch him, he was being tagged by certain players and he was being brought in. So if you remember the goal chance, he was actually in under that high ball with Smith when he won it over his head. So what they tried to do is they tried to tag him and bring him into the full forward line and exploit his height. So he didn't have as good a game, and Eoin Bond obviously picked up the slack, I thought, an awful lot for him. It is a worry on, they'll probably look at their own full back line and say, were they as good and adept at obviously that direct ball in the first half? And they weren't. They had problems, and there were caused. There was definitely problems being caused, but he's such a great player, and he's such an important player for them, that they now have a couple of weeks to fix it. But they will be aware, obviously, of both Derry and Monaghan's forward power, and especially their full forward power. So they'll realise that, look, we need to get that problem fixed ASAP.
A couple of comments in. Cavan Lad 100 says, I wasn't surprised Cavan started the match the way they did. Donegal got a bit of luck with those 2 goals. And Stephen Gormley asks, who are Donegal getting in the Ulster final? Does Anthony think?
Yeah, that's this game. It's. I would have thought Derry, and people will obviously fancy Derry after the job they did in Tyrone, but I just don't think, we spoke about it last week, I don't think Tyrone were the outfit that they were, or that they are. Few issues there. So I think Derry will. The problem will be with Derry is trying to actually put a lid on the expectation now. There, decent enough league. I think they've been coming. They were always kind of set up to nab Tyrone. There wasn't a lot of talk about them. People were saying, "Oh yeah, they're playing well, but Tyrone will be a step ahead." So there was always that opportunity. Monaghan will have had a good look at them now and be able to see, okay, their half-backs, the issue that 5 and 7 caused Tyrone, running hard. Obviously McInnes, the same thing. What can we do there? We need to pin them back. And as we said last week, Monaghan will get back and they'll just say, right, we're just going to set you. We're just going to get ready for you to run in here. And when you run in here, we're going to take the ball off you. Monaghan are very, very good at doing that. And Monaghan, listen, they've been thereabouts. We all know anytime they're written off, they come back, they bounce back. Very, very strong team as well. Very methodical team, and a very very well coached team. So to be honest with you, I'm going to reserve my judgment on that one until later in the week, if that's okay.
Absolutely no problem. It's going to be a cracker of a game this Sunday. Let's talk about Kerry against Cork. Parky were in on Saturday evening. A little bit of a disagreement between myself and Ger about where exactly this leaves Kerry in terms of, I guess, their momentum, or do you make them heavier favourites or softer favourites for the All-Ireland as a result of Saturday? For me, it's kind of about the same. Like, I mean, they struggled for 50 minutes and then they showed that their squad depth is to be believed. The hype is real about the squad that they have this year, but there are still relatively familiar concerns about how Cork did manage to shut down that attack in that first, I guess, 40 to 50 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to look into in the game. You know, I think Kerry were always going to be set up for that game in the sense of, was it quite good enough, right? Because Cork, everyone was kind of dismissing Cork. Everyone knows Cork are on a different transition and they're at a different stage in development, whatever that means, but they're at it, right? So a lot of things being spoken about, even in the papers beforehand. It was all kind of talk about Cork and the amount of clubs that they have and the amount of money that they have and then the issues that they have, and all kind of, and I'd say Kerry people were happy enough because there was very little talk, a little bit of stuff on Clifford obviously, and the fact that he's going to have to carry the team. Well, I don't think he has to carry the team necessarily anymore. So to look at it from a Kerry point of view, Cork did very, very well, obviously had a plan. Powter came in and then they obviously dropped Maguire in, so they packed the defence. They focused on a number of players. They focused on the two Cliffords. Paddy Clifford was man-marked throughout the game. Literally, Cork fella went wherever he went with him, and they identified that, listen, this guy is the quarterback of the forward setup, so we need to make sure that he is stopped from putting the ball in, and they did a very, very good job on that. They did an excellent job obviously on Clifford inside. Well, and once of course they started to affect the ball coming in, it was always going to be more difficult for him inside. So they did a good job there. O'Shea was although I think he ended up with 10 or 11 scores, but he didn't have the same influence. But of course Kerry have so much prowess at the front, you can't plug all the holes. So Stephen O'Brien then was kind of not left free, but they were, let's just say, less attention put on him. And of course he had an unbelievable first half. Like, he carried the fight for Kerry massively so, caused Cork's all sorts of problems. So that defensive structure is all fine again, but as I said to you, kind of a la the Cavan and Donegal game, you then have to bring that transition from your full back line up to your midfield into your forward line. And although the forwards like Sherlock and I think it's O'Mahony, was it? Kicked some unbelievable scores and caused issues, there were still scores where there was 2 or 3 Kerry lads around them, if you get me. So they had to do a lot of kind of individual stuff, not very intricate. A lot of just brilliant play
from
by
range.
them.
A
lot of them from range, exactly. So what that tells you is that, well, we've 12 players behind the ball, but you 2 or 3 lads up there, whatever you get, you're going to have to make the most of it nearly yourself, right? So that's not a long-term game plan, of course. So I think at 7 points all, Cork had come really back into it well. And I just thought, this is a time now to change your kick-out strategy. This is a time to really push up and try to impact the kick-out at least, because a lot of the kick-outs, it was kind of maybe 4 against 6. In other words, 4 Cork men against 6 Kerry lads, or kind of 6 against 8. So they always had a bit of an advantage because of Powter coming back. Now, he was trying to push up and then squeeze another man higher, but Kerry got their kick-outs away relatively easy. And I just thought there was an opportunity for them there to change it and be even braver, I suppose. So when they got it to that, because again, it wasn't a long-term plan, which was just to allow them to pretty much have the kick out. So from a Kerry perspective, first half bit edgy, a little bit off kilter, trying to get used to the fact of this kind of defensive plan. But then in the second half, obviously they said, okay, we'll try to work this out a bit more. Cork started to kind of wane a bit, and there's still a lot of football to be played from the 50th minute to about the 70th or the 75th minute. Like, it's still a massive amount of football, and it's a period of time where you can do major damage, which of course they did do. So the bench helped. obviously, fellas came on, but you could see Cork start to wane. I think Geaney got a score in the second half. I don't know if you remember it, where he basically just stepped inside.
Space then,
the midfielder for Cork was just, you could see he was just out on his feet. He was kind of one-on-one, and he just stuck inside and stuck it over the bar. And it was kind of a real score of, right, well, that's it, it's done. I don't think the referee helped Cork. Now, to be honest with you, I thought the referee in it was very pro Kerry. I thought some of the tackling and the intensity in the first half was what you want from a championship match. But it's the first time I've seen a fella bring up a ball 2 or 3 times in a game, and I don't think he was being effed and blinded out of it. I think Cork fellas were disappointed in, say, that the free had been given and shown that disappointment. But he brought the ball up 2 or 3 times to put it in scoring range for O'Shea. I thought some of his decisions just around the field massively helped Kerry in a very, very important time of the game, from about 50 minutes to about 55, 56 minutes. And there was a couple of times where Cork had bodies around Kerry, and I thought there was some just handy enough frees that it ended up Kerry, and just gave them that little bit of daylight. Now, they probably would have, I'm not saying they wouldn't have won the game. They were starting to power on, but it just gave them that little bit of added impetus. So I'm kind of, I heard you with Ger earlier on. I think there's both of you are correct in the sense of Ger is right. There is an enormous amount of quality here. The defensive structure, as we spoke about, which was my big bugbear over Kerry last year, that is now very much sorted. There was a couple of occasions, by the way, where Cork ran down through that middle.
Ryan Hurley, there was one occasion where he kind of looked like...
and the midfielder, he slips my mind, the number 9 went down twice. It was straight down through the middle where he put a bit of pace on it. Now, he ended up being crowded out by Cork or Kerry players, but if he only had a man to slip a ball to. So that hasn't happened during the league. They've been relatively solid with Morley at that 6, but for some reason they had gaps there. So they'll definitely have a look at that. But I think overall there wasn't really a massive panic. They weren't in danger of conceding any goals. And again, a lot of the scores that came were long, rangy, really, really good scores. They were sloppy a couple of times in a few fouls. Foley kind of slipped and kind of tackled a few guys twice, and they give some simple frees away. But he'll be happy enough. I think the undercooked thing is important that you spoke about. That's an important point. They'll win the Munster final at a canter, you would imagine, and then they'll go into Croke Park.
4 weeks off after that.
Yeah, it's a long time. And no matter what you do with A's versus B games, I think they would have rathered if this was flipped, if they had Cork in the Munster final, because at least, that was 50 minutes of a good battle, and they were in the battle. I can't really see it being, although, But
it's going to be Killarney for the Munster final. So that is a big factor. They haven't lost since the middle of the 90s there.
Yeah.
Going to Parky Rin in the Munster final, regardless of the opposition, going on the road would have been a bit tougher.
It would have been a bit tougher, and it would have set them up a bit, with that battle, being steely hard. But look, they should have enough on for whoever it is in the quarter final. They're still massive favourites with the forward prowess they have. Because look, you can, as I said, you can. It's like a dam bursting. You can put as many kind of holes up as you can and kind of fix things. But eventually, someone's going to come out of the woodworks and get you.
Yeah, can I just add, on a general sort of kick-out point, and this kind of goes for kind of every match really, where the opposition gives you the short kick-out. And it felt like Tyrone gave it to Kerry last year to an extent, where they kind of had the midfield battle won, but they were also taking the short kick-out because Tyrone were essentially leaving their cornerbacks free. Cork did the same thing, and I couldn't tell you how well or otherwise Shane Ryan played, because he didn't have to make any saves and he just gave the ball to the cornerback every time. Is there an argument to be made sometimes that even though both your cornerbacks are free, to just boot it out the pitch anyway, because there's a reason why they're giving you the cornerbacks, is because they don't trust their men out the middle of the pitch? Maybe it's only something you do if you're chasing a game or you're a few points down, maybe not when you're 8-9 points up, but I felt like they could have done it to Tyrone last year. They could have tested out midfield a little bit more, and maybe they could have done it to Cork as well on Saturday.
Yeah, it's probably it's an option where you could do, or what you can do is, if you're feeling that way, is just bring your 2 or your 4 and put them out around midfield. Yeah. So actually make it equalise it back out around the middle. So that's probably an option to do. But a lot of times, if it's there, and obviously the Kerry backs are so comfortable on the ball anyway. You just flick it out to them and say, right, we'll just take it on from here.
It just feels that it gets very slow then, that all of a sudden Cork have their bodies on your 45, and then there's an extra bank of defenders there, and that's where Kerry really struggle in attack at the moment, just trying to pick the holes in a
it can do, and you're right. It does get tricky, but what you're going to have to just think of is a lot of times, and this happens a lot, and you could see it in the Cavan Donegal game for one of the goal chances that Donegal got in the first half. What happens is you'll come forward with the ball, it'll be slow and kind of methodical, you'll try to get it into the full forward line, and say there's 2 or 3 players around Clifford, and next thing all the Cork players break, right? They win the ball and they break and they come up the far end of the field. If you win that ball as a Kerry player, where they're attacking, now they've all vacated, or a good few of them vacated. There's less of a structure in your defence, and that's where you can actually make hay. So the vital thing for a team, if you're defending against that, is that if you win the ball, you make sure that it goes dead the far end. Do not turn the ball over again, because what will happen is your 2 or your 4 or your full back or whatever it is, your 10 or 12 will now be out of position, because fellas will be trying to get back up the pitch to get a score. If you don't get a score, or as I say, at least kick it wide, you're now caught, because a quick ball back in and there's mayhem now in your own defence. You're not set up as well as you would have. That's why Cluxton was so good for Dublin, because when teams would turn Dublin over and get a score, he had the ball down and he was gone. He was kicking the ball over you as you were retreating back, and that's why Dublin got so many big scores after a team actually scored against them. You get a point, they'll end up getting a goal on you because your defensive structure is not set up. So a lot of teams, it's a tricky one. But the one thing you have to make sure, and I'm sure like all the coaches and the analysts and whatever else involved in teams say, that if we do something like that, if you crowd out Kerry and you end up winning the ball and you turn over Clifford, you make sure you can either do one of 2 things. You either set it and kind of nearly take the pace back out of it, hold on to the ball, or you attack quickly, but you make sure that the ball goes dead.
Last question before we let you go. Rory Larmer here asks, Leinster semi predictions, do Meath have any chance? We're almost out of time, so could you give me a percentage on Meath's possibility of winning?
Yes, they have a chance.
Do you want to put a number on that?
I'm not in the percentage mode at the moment. I think at the moment they've at least 40%.
Right, okay. Okay, so a double header of 2 contests.
And that could improve during the week.
Yeah. Okay, nice one. A nice bit of Meath confidence. Looking forward to it. It's not just Kildare who can topple Dublin this year. There's an absolute live possibility that it could be. It's not that Kildare could topple Dublin.
Look, I'm sure we'll talk about it later in the week, but I think the Dublin game against Wexford will have taught Dublin absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And it's a relatively small full back line for Dublin. So I think there's an area there that Meath could make hay if they want to.
Very interesting. Anthony, thanks for popping in this morning.
No problem.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social platforms, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the OTB Sports app to enjoy the latest and best in sports content and analysis. OTB AM back live from 7:30 tomorrow with Emer and Ailish Considine, Daniel Harris, Anthony Nash and much more. Right now we are leaving you with the best bits from OTB Sports' packed weekend of sport. Enjoy and see you tomorrow.
It compares her with Conor McGregor, but not in. If you just hear that, you might think it's kind of a cheap.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. But it really doesn't. It gives Conor McGregor credit for the things that he has done. It gives him, and obviously, is honest about some of the things he has done as well. But it's showing their different ways of being Irish to an international and American audience. So McGregor's is one of version of Irishness, he said. Yet Katie Taylor's modesty, her almost puritanical seriousness of purpose, her absolute unpretentiousness, her determination not to give away too much, and belief that deeds speak louder than words may actually be a better reflection of what we're really like. Which is kind of a conceited way of looking at all of us as Irish people, but if you're I'd take it.
Yeah.
And it is, I think he ends with being she's one of a kind and she's ours and we're lucky she is. And I think everybody is incredibly in awe of what Katie Taylor has done.
Yeah.
For her sport, for herself, for her sport, for women's sport. And and for the business of sport as well. Like,
she's so many things. It's kind of like, I think the one issue I have with this piece is that both she and McGregor are total outliers. Like, Katie Taylor is like somebody who, despite being of a generation that basically has abandoned the church, is a strong believer in God. She like quotes God all the time, and I just like how he says last week a tabloid newspaper described Taylor's unwillingness to talk about her private life as controversial, as if that should be controversial. Like, what has her private life got to do with anything? But most people regard her reticence on these matters as refreshingly normal. It wouldn't have seemed odd in any other era. At a time when fame is seen as the most precious prize life has to offer, Taylor appears to have little interest in it. For her, fame seems nothing more than the inevitable, perhaps even regrettable consequence of the pursuit of sporting greatness. She does not seek fame and she does not seek sympathy. The falling out with her father must have been incredibly painful at the time, yet she kept her counsel. People pieced together the story from the evidence of others. Taylor did not want to enlist public support in a personal struggle. That's also an unusual attitude these days, and she's just totally united in nation.
And that's why the comparison to McGregor is really interesting, because McGregor had to become famous to make MMA the viable business it is for him to make the money that he has made. He was the vehicle for MMA to be as popular as it has been over the last 10 years. Katie Taylor needed to do that initially to get boxing into the Olympics, and then but she didn't do it through the fame route. She did it through, I'm just going to be really, really goddamn good at boxing, and even though the pool's going to have to catch up with me, if I'm this good, they will catch up.
Yeah.
And so she not only did that with amateur boxing to get into the Olympics, she's done it now with professional boxing, which is just an achievement that will be hard even to analyse in the moment now. Like,
it is hard.
It's really difficult, and we'll have to see if it lasts too. But if it is if it is enduring, then it's going to be something that makes Katie Taylor an international figure for history books for a long, long time. I think one of the other things, actually, when you're just talking about fixtures, Colin O'Rourke is talking about the lack of publicity for the championship, and I heard Paul Flynn talking about
OTB AM.